across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
The full due process was followed during this appointment, as it is with all ambassadors, said the Prime Minister to Parliament on the 10th of September last year. Well, that wasn't true. We now know that Peter Mandelson failed his vetting before he was made ambassador to America. We know someone's lying. Who is it? Is it the Prime Minister? Is it the Foreign Office? Why were we not told the whole truth? Why was the Prime Minister, he says, not told the full truth? Another big story in which we're not being told the full truth is Epsom. There are riots and disturbances there because of an alleged gang rape that happened at the weekend. 6 days on, the police don't know who the suspects are, and they can't give us a description. They can't tell us the ethnicity. They can't tell us the age. They can't tell us where they're from. They can't tell us where they are with their inquiry. They say it's too early a stage in the investigation. That, to me, sounds like absolute nonsense, especially when there have been numerous other times when the ethnicity, age and description of the subject of their investigations has been given to us very, very quickly indeed. We're going to cover these two big stories in depth this evening. We're going to get them from every angle, and of course I want to hear from you as well. 0344 499 1000. Can the Prime Minister survive? Should he survive? What's going on and why aren't we being told? We'll give you all the detail. We've got top experts like Isabel Oakeshott, like Kevin Schofield from HuffPost, and we'll get into all of that. We've got policing experts, really good guests. We're going to get into all of this, and I want to know what you think. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, or you can give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. So much to talk about, so many ways to let me know your thoughts between now and 10 here on Talk. Just a quick thank you to everybody who's been very kind. I was unwell last night. Thank you to Charlie Rowley for doing an excellent job. I'm back now, almost back to full health, and I'll be here tonight and tomorrow. I'm off next week because I'm teaching a course. I'm teaching a journalism course. Alex Phillips will be with you next week, but then full steam ahead from the 27th. Let's have a look at what the Prime Minister said versus what we now know. Starmer saying the Mandelson appointment, that full due process was followed. This is the 10th of September 2025. This is what the Prime Minister said.
As she and the House would expect, full due process was followed during this appointment, as it is with all ambassadors. The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret. He is right to do so. He's now playing an important part in the US-UK relationship. Mr. Speaker, as I say, full due process was gone through in relation to this appointment, as would be expected. As for the publication of documents, as she well knows, that's subject to a procedure which includes an independent element. Be subject to the usual procedure.
Then Mandelson was sacked. Then we were told again, this time on the 5th of February this year, that due diligence and the security vetting need to be looked at again. This is what Starmer said.
There was a due diligence exercise that culminated in questions being asked. Because I wanted to know the answer to certain issues, that's why those questions were asked. The answer to those questions were not truthful. There was then, I should add, security vetting carried out independently by the security services, which is an intensive exercise that gave him clearance for the role, and you have to go through that before you take up the post. Clearly, both the due diligence and the security vetting need to be looked at again.
Not only do they need to be looked at again, the fact is that Peter Mandelson did not pass the security vetting. It's called developed vetting. It's one of the highest levels of clearance that you can have. I went through the early stages of developed vetting myself. It's a very intense process when I worked in government. Peter Mandelson failed that, yet the Foreign Office, we are told anyway, said it was fine for it to be put forward. Many questions being asked tonight. A government spokesman has said this evening the security vetting process for Peter Mandelson was sponsored by the Foreign Office. The decision to grant developed vetting to Peter Mandelson against the recommendation of UK security vetting was taken by officials in the FCDO, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. Who were those officials? Why did they make the decision, and why, we are told, the Prime Minister didn't know? In fact, the statement goes on, neither the Prime Minister nor any government minister was aware that Peter Mandelson was granted developed vetting against the advice of UK security vetting earlier this week. Once the Prime Minister was informed, he immediately instructed officials to establish the facts about why the developed vetting was granted in order to enact plans to update the House of Commons. The government is committed to complying with the humble address. This is the mechanism by which all the papers were out. 174 pages, not a single word in those pages said that he didn't pass the vetting. The government is committed to complying with the humble address in full as soon as possible. Any documentation within the scope of the humble address that requires redaction on the basis of national security or international relations will be provided to the Intelligence and Security Committee. This will include documents provided by the FCDO by UK security vetting. Absolutely astonishing. There are a number of questions this evening. The official line appears to be that Keir Starmer didn't know, his private office, his senior officials, his senior civil servants didn't know, Number 10 didn't know, Cabinet Office didn't know. So why did Starmer categorically say, as we've just seen, that Mandelson cleared security vetting when he apparently didn't know? Why do they keep saying due process was followed if they don't know whether due process was actually followed? Why did the Foreign Office not tell the Prime Minister that Mandelson had failed the vetting? That's the big one. Is it really credible that actually this decision was made but the Prime Minister wasn't told? Do you believe the Prime Minister? In February, when the humble address was tabled, including the request for all information, did nobody think to check? Steve Swinford, the political editor of The Times, is asking, did nobody think to check whether Mandelson had actually passed his vetting? It's a fairly straightforward question. Did he or did he not pass the actual vetting? And why were the documents about the security vetting withheld from the first tranche of the files? That has nothing to do with international relations. That has nothing to do with the security of this country. That has nothing to do with how we got on with America. It is straightforwardly a very straightforward question. Why weren't we told? Kemi Badenoch's been out tonight. She says that on Mandelson, Starmer misled Parliament. This is what the leader of the Conservatives said.
There are three serious concerns here. The first one is that on the 10th of September, the Prime Minister misled Parliament by saying the full due process was followed. If Mandelson failed the security vetting, full due process was not followed. Misleading Parliament is a resigning offence. On the 5th of February, at a press conference in Hastings, the Prime Minister said that Peter Mandelson cleared the vetting process. This is not true. That means he broke the ministerial code by saying something deliberately untrue. He misled the country. And the third thing is that it looks like there's been a cover-up, because we had a humble address in Parliament where we asked for all of the documents. This did not come out then. It's gone to the press. That means that something was being covered up.
Misleading Parliament is a resigning offence. There are journalists this evening looking into this. This has all come out because of excellent investigative work done by the Guardian newspaper. Not often I praise them, but I will on this occasion, absolutely. We also know that other journalists are saying that their sources are telling them, a Bloomberg journalist saying that their sources are saying that the Prime Minister knew about this 2 days ago. Why did he not tell Parliament yesterday? Why did he not immediately correct the record? Why did he not immediately go to Parliament and say, actually, hold on, I got it wrong, I wasn't told, this is the truth? Isabel Oakeshott is our international editor and joins me now. Isabel, what the heck is going on?
Oh my goodness, this is an absolute can of worms, isn't it? And I really think Keir Starmer is in very, very grave political peril with these revelations. As you say, either he's lied or he is leading an administration of catastrophic fundamental incompetence. I find it completely implausible that something so significant as the failure of his desired candidate for arguably the most important diplomatic post that the UK has, the failure of that candidate to pass vetting was somehow not shared with Keir Starmer or anyone very close to Keir Starmer. How was that kept a secret? Why was it kept a secret? Was it really kept a secret? And as you say, even if you could give him a pass for all of what's happened up until he knew about this situation, why has it taken The Guardian to inform us all about this story? And why didn't Keir Starmer go straight to the House of Commons, make an urgent statement and say, I'm very sorry, I am absolutely mortified to have just discovered this. It's clearly a massive error of process. Time and again, he's told us, hasn't he, that due process was followed and that it was his judgment that was to blame. Under any normal circumstances, under any old rules of operation, this would be absolutely a resigning matter. We do know, of course, that local elections are coming up in 3 weeks' time. It may be that there's a decision taken just to keep him in his place until after that.
We've got the Tories saying that misleading Parliament is a resigning matter. We just heard from Kemi Badenoch there. The Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey, says that Starmer should go. The Greens say Starmer should go. Do you think he can hang on?
I mean, you know, the threshold for prime ministerial resignations seems to rise with every new prime minister, and the old norms seem to have disappeared. As I said, under any normal circumstances, I don't think this would be survivable. But I just think this is a man who is going to have to be dragged out by his fingernails.
Yes, it's fascinating within all that. Let me ask you about a couple of other things today. The Epsom riots that have been happening, the fact that there's an alleged gang rape there as well. Another big event, important event that we're just not being told about, Isabel.
Yeah, I mean, this is the scene of a lot of tension over migrant hotels, has been for a long time. Now there has been this alleged horrific incident, and people want information, and information is the one thing that they are not being given. They believe that an alleged rape, as I understand it, they believe that was committed by somebody who is new to the community, if I can put it diplomatically, and they're just not being given the information they want. Now, we've been here before with the very horrific, tragic Southport murders, where the police pretty much went to great lengths not to tell us who the culprit really was and what their background was. This is, of course, mercifully, it doesn't involve the death of children, but it's still a very, very serious apparent incident. And people just want to know the truth. They don't want cover-ups. And we know that when there is a vacuum of information, misinformation can creep in, and that can be as damaging and as dangerous to everybody as the truth.
Isabel, thank you. Isabel Oakeshott, our international editor, thank you. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, speaking in Washington at the moment, giving an impromptu press conference. We know that Hezbollah and Hezbollah, we don't know what they're doing, but we certainly know that Lebanon and Israel have a ceasefire. He is talking about Iran as well. Let's step into that.
Didn't want to go under oath. That's what I heard. That the women, the victims, or whatever, they refused to go under oath, which was a little surprising. Now, Melania felt strongly about it because she was accused of that I met her through Epsom, but it turned out to be totally false. It was a false oath.
Don't these fires also include Iraq and region?
Are we talking about the one with Lebanon?
Lebanon, Iraq, and
the whole thing. So we just made a deal with Lebanon. As of 2 hours from now, we have a ceasefire with Israel and Lebanon, and that'll be great. And they'll be meeting, probably coming to the White House over the next 4 or 5 days. And that'll be the first time they've met in 44 years, which is pretty unneighborly when considering they're neighbors. But there's a really good chance that that'll work out with Lebanon and Israel. I met with, through the telephone, with the president of Lebanon, who's a really good guy, highly respected, and with Bibi. And I think there's a chance we'll be meeting right here in the not too distant.
Israel and Lebanon have tried to make peace before. What's going to be the difference this time?
Me. I'm the difference. Big difference. Me.
About taxes. States like Virginia, North Carolina, and New York, Democratic states are looking at raising taxes. Is that going to take away from the tax cuts that
What's happened? No, because, you know, no tax on tips. I'm going over no tax on tips today. That's why I'm going to Nevada. I'm going to Arizona. But This is sort of a no tax on tips. What's happening is...
Donald Trump talking about domestic issues there, but he did respond to that question there about Israel and Lebanon. They will be meeting, he says, at the White House for the first time in 44 years, the prime ministers of both countries there. There is a ceasefire that has been announced. It'll come into effect in a couple of hours' time. That is between Israel and Lebanon. But what about Hezbollah? It looks as if the terrorists there will abide by that. Those are the early indications, but of course we will see what happens. A big day, 3 really big stories. That ceasefire, the Mandelson story, the Epsom story as well. There's so much to get into when it comes to debate, and that's why we're going to the debate desk next. We will have our 2 regulars, Leo Watson and James Hodgkinson, will be with us in just a second. But I want to hear from you as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Peter says, speaking of Mandelson, how come the investigation into him has gone quiet after his arrest? Well, these things can take time, but Peter, I share that worry, certainly. Charges haven't been brought yet. He's not on bail or anything, so we'll see what happens. Another person says, Starmer must have known. They would have told him he is the Prime Minister, but I bet once again he will have the brass neck to cling on. He's off to Paris on Friday. Bye-bye, never hear Keir, says Margaret in Birmingham. He also sent me some well wishes. Thank you. Keith in Nottingham says, I appreciate everything about the Mandelson story, but I just want to ask you about migrants being put in homes of multiple occupancy. Is this not going to devalue neighbouring properties? That is not good for the housing market, says Keith in Nottingham. Well, certainly, Keith, it doesn't have to be the big stories. Whatever you want to talk about, this is my show, but it's your show too. Send those messages in and we'll talk about it. We're talking about petrol prices as well. A very, very good friend of the programme, a viewer, sent me in a shocking photograph about the price of diesel. We're going to talk about that a little bit later as well. So much to discuss on the debate desk and indeed throughout the programme. So stay with us here in the Evening Exchange on Talk.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday. Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious, since the whole point of this part of the war, well, at least as I thought it, or saw it, was to reopen it. Can anybody explain that? You are not a worthy citizen. You couldn't even spot a murderer in your own house. Well, you could. You just didn't tell anyone about it. Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk. Only at the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who has been in touch, including Dawn, who says, in the film A Few Good Men, Jack Nicholson's character famously shouted, "You can't handle the truth." This government and the police certainly subscribe to this view. Deborah's been in touch as well and says, for Starmer to repeatedly state that all vetting and due diligence were carried out, he must have been kept fully informed about Mandelson, especially given that he was aware of his history with Epstein. He would have been briefed and kept abreast of the process. On that basis, the Foreign Office would have told him, and MI5 had warned him, but he ignored them as well. Well, certainly the Prime Minister denies that. It'll be very interesting to see what the debate desk panellists think about that in a second. Brian says Starmer is a better escape artist than Houdini. Chris in Northumberland says, I don't understand how Mandelson and those who appointed him can get away with just resigning. If I fabricated my suitability to do a job, I go to prison as I work with vulnerable people in the NHS. Mandelson represented all of us in the UK, in the US. Surely someone is going to jail, says Chris. Well, let's just remind ourselves about what the Prime Minister said to Parliament on the 10th of September last year.
As she and the House would expect, full due process was followed during this appointment, as it is with all ambassadors. The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret. He is right to do so. He's now playing an important part in the US-UK relationship. Mr. Speaker, as I say, full due process was gone through in relation to this appointment, as would be expected. As for the publication of documents, as she well knows, that's subject to a procedure which includes an independent element. Be subject to the usual procedure.
Keir Starmer speaking to Parliament in September. Kemi Badenoch spoke this evening. This is what the leader of the Conservatives said.
Three serious concerns here. The first one is that on the 10th of September, the Prime Minister misled Parliament by saying the full due process was followed. If Mandelson failed the security vetting, full due process was not followed. Misleading Parliament is a resigning offence. On the 5th of February, at a press conference in Hastings, the Prime Minister said that Peter Mandelson cleared the vetting process. This is not true. That means he broke the ministerial code by saying something deliberately untrue. He misled the country. And the third thing is that it looks like there's been a cover-up, because we had a humble address in Parliament where we asked for all of the documents. This did not come out then. It's gone to the press. That means that something was being covered up.
Kemi Badenoch speaking this evening. Well, let's go to the debate desk. Leo Watson, the political strategist, and James Hodgkinson, research associate at the Adam Smith Institute, are with us. Great to have you in the studio. Leo, can the Prime Minister survive this?
Oh, yeah, he's going to survive it. I mean, it's a bit of a storm in a teacup, isn't it?
Storm in a teacup?
Yeah.
Really?
This part of it is a storm in a teacup, certainly. I think...
You sure?
Due process has been followed. The Foreign Office can overrule the recommendation on vetting. So,
and not tell the Prime Minister that he failed the vetting?
Well, why would the Prime Minister then have to resign for that? Not being told. I mean, that's not, that's not the Prime Minister.
Was he or was he not told is the question. I mean, the government says the security vetting process for Peter Mandelson was sponsored by the FCDO. The decision to grant developed vetting to Peter Mandelson against the recommendation of the UK security vetting was taken by officials there. So do you think officials should resign? Do you think Ollie Robbins, the Permanent Secretary, should resign?
Well, I'd like to see the whole system overhauled, I think, which is everyone has said. If due diligence was followed, which I think it probably was, I think it shows how bankrupt the system is.
Okay, I mean, how can you argue that due diligence was followed when he failed the vetting and then ended up as ambassador? Like, no matter what went wrong in the middle bit there, something seriously went wrong, did it not? Well,
this is the problem. Due diligence was followed, and you're allowed to ignore the vetting advice. So it clearly shows that the system, root to branch, whether it was under a Labour government or a Conservative government or whatever government, just doesn't work. It's not fit for purpose.
James? Well, not that big a deal?
Well, I completely disagree with that assessment. I think it's hypocrisy to the highest degree from Starmer, and I think what we're seeing is a completely different man, now he's in government, to the man that was in opposition. Rightly, he called the Tories out for some of the sleaze and the scandals that happened under their rule. And he also accused Boris Johnson of misleading the House on at least 2 occasions. At the end of the day, the position of US Ambassador is a position of immense trust, and it comes with a massive taxpayer-backed salary of £161,000 a year. At the end of the day, it's the first political appointee to that position since 1977. And I think if this is the state of our vetting process, and as you say, if due process was followed, it needs overhauling. But we really need more transparency on this, and we need the release of everything as soon as we can.
The Prime Minister apparently knew about this 2 days ago, we're told. Why not tell Parliament on Tuesday or yesterday?
I mean, that concerns me that he knew 2 days ago, but I think maybe he's deliberately not asking questions so he doesn't get in trouble, quite frankly.
But this is the point. So you've got the person who was essentially the chief prosecutor of this country, a very gifted lawyer, who got to Director of Public Prosecutions who didn't ask basic questions. I mean,
he's a gifted lawyer when you guys want him to be, and he's also a terrible leader when you want him to be.
Well, he can be both. He can be both. I'm not saying someone can be a gifted lawyer and a terrible leader. He's a terrible politician, but a very good barrister.
Whenever a prosecution was overlooked 15, 20 years ago, he was a terrible lawyer, but now he's a gifted lawyer because we.
I've never said he was a terrible lawyer.
I'm not saying you. Oh, I'm not talking about.
I said you guys.
You've never said anything wrong in your life, Peter. I'm talking about
many wrong things, but I've never said he was a bad lawyer. I've never said he was a bad lawyer. The point is that why is he so incurious? He tells us time and time again he's Mr. Process, Mr. Details, everything has to be done by the book. Yet he didn't think to ask, or no one around him, apparently we are told this evening, no one thought to ask, did Peter Mandelson actually pass the vetting first time round? Like, that is pretty shameful.
Well, that's actually quite good lawyering, because then you're in a position where you can actually come out and honestly say, I didn't know because I didn't ask. So that's just good lawyering. But I think the whole...
It's not credible, though, is it? It's not credible.
No, and the whole thing is absolutely shambolic. It has been from start to finish. From picking Mandelson as a political appointment, it's an absolute disgrace, and there's no hiding from that. But is he going to resign over this particular issue? Not a chance.
Not a chance?
Not a chance.
Not at all?
Not this specific issue right now. He might resign at the end of the process, but even then, I just don't think so.
OK. I mean... Are we in a position where the Prime Minister has credibility and should continue, in your view, James?
Well, look, Keir Starmer has built a reputation while he was a lawyer as a man of process. And at the end of the day, the article from The Guardian that came out this morning made it quite clear that by the time the decision on whether Mandelson had passed or failed that vetting was made, Keir Starmer had already announced the appointment. This doesn't speak of a man who upholds due process. Do I think he'll resign over this?
But if he wasn't told, can we hold him responsible for that?
Well, look, I would argue it is the duty of a Prime Minister, the most senior politician we have in this country, to make sure that the ambassador appointment he makes to our most important ally is absolutely above board and absolutely transparent, and I think he's failed in that.
But, you would both argue, I would imagine, as you have a second Leo, that he shouldn't have appointed him in the first place. He now says that Mandelson lied to him. He's in a very interesting position where he's essentially now throwing the Foreign Office under the bus here and saying they didn't tell us and they should have. So what should happen now? Should he go? Should the Permanent Secretary of the Foreign Office, Ollie Robbins, go? What do you think?
Well, look, as usual, nothing is ever in government black and white. At the end of the day, people are responsible for this and people should go. Do I think this will be the issue that unseats Keir Starmer? No. He's weathered much bigger storms, but I do feel immensely sorry for the victims of Epstein who have had to watch a man that everyone knew was associated rise through the ranks, be our ambassador, and now at least they are seeing the decline of Mandelson, and at least they're now seeing investigations and questions starting to be asked.
Leo, your view on this is very clear, but how do you think people will react? Obviously, Kemi Badenoch's called for him to, said it's a resigning matter that he's misled the House. I don't recall her saying that when Boris Johnson misled the House. We've had the Liberal Democrats and the Greens saying he should go as well. In the public, a lot of people thinking, postal ballots are going out at the moment. This is a key point right now for people to fill in their postal ballots. What sort of effect, if any? Maybe you don't think it'll have any effect. What do you think? I
mean, yeah, there's a standing order of the Prime Minister to resign by all opposition parties at all times. I mean, I got sick of the amount of times Keir Starmer is asking any Prime Minister to resign. I think it debases our politics and we need to move away from that. And I said that when Labour in opposition, as a Labour voter.
What should be a resigning matter? If you could choose a politician over the past 10 or 15 years who should have resigned at a certain point, what should a resigning matter actually be?
I mean, seriously breaking the law would be nice, like Boris, but that
did he seriously break the law?
I mean, absolutely. He broke his own COVID laws. Like, the guy's a disgrace.
He got a fixed penalty notice. That's not seriously breaking the law, is it?
He debased the office, and he should have gone multiple times. I think that's.
I mean, there are many people who would argue that this debases the office now, and that by your logic, Keir Starmer should go.
I think the issue, the Mandelson issue and the ties to Epstein, that is serious cause to reflect on whether you're the right person. Morgan McSweeney has gone. I think ultimately he's the fall guy for this, and rightly so. It was his project, his decision, and him really pushing people through. I think you've already got your man. I think we should move on this particular issue.
Do you think people will move on?
Yeah, I honestly don't think voters care too much about this specific issue that's happening right now.
That he could possibly have lied to Parliament?
I don't think really anyone cares if they lied to Parliament. I think the public...
You don't think anyone cares if the Prime Minister lies to Parliament?
The public,
really?
I think the public assume the Prime Minister's lying to Parliament. We've got into that situation.
If he's coming back to Parliament, probably tomorrow, let's face it, to say, or Monday or whenever, to say, by the way, I misled the House, that's just not someone omitting to mention a constituency. That's humiliating for a Prime Minister.
He hasn't misled the House. It's quite clear he hasn't misled the House. What he said to the House was that the due diligence was followed, the process was followed. It was. They can and legitimately overrule a vetting decision. And they did. And that is due diligence. So is your view that the Prime Minister's done nothing wrong here? Interesting. Technically, no. Actually, as a leader of this country, as your man here has said quite rightly, probably.
What should happen now, James?
Well, I do think Leo's got a point on this, which is the fact that Keir Starmer has debased the office of Prime Minister, in my view, but so have other Prime Ministers that have gone before. And I think what it speaks to is a complete erosion of trust in our politics and in our politicians. And ultimately, I think this is a good catalyst for everyone to take a long, hard look at themselves and hold themselves to the highest standards.
But the question is as well, why is that trust gone? Because I'm a great defender of many politicians. I think there are a lot of people who stand for office and say, well done for standing for office, but actually, you know, your private life and everything you've ever said, done, tweeted, thought is going to be under the microscope. And sometimes that's unfair. I remember one MP saying to me a few years ago, I can't have an argument with my husband in Sainsbury's because someone will whip out their phone, they'll film it and put it on Facebook. I understand that. But when it comes to actually credibly the Foreign Office taking this decision in some sort of weird hermetic bubble and not telling Number 10 in any way, that to me is really fishy. I'm not saying Starmer is guilty per se, but surely some heads should rule somewhere for this.
Absolutely. Look, there's a complete difference between people, real people who have done things in their past, entering politics, and some of those things being brought up. Do I think it's always fair? No. But when people are in the office of Prime Minister of this country, we can expect them to hold themselves to the highest possible standards of public service. And I don't think we've seen that from Starmer, and I don't think we've seen it from other Prime Ministers in recent memory too.
Lots on this and on that matter of politicians. I often recommend the third best book written about politics in the last 10 years, which is, of course, Isabel Hardman's Why We Get the Wrong Politicians. Lots more to discuss on all of this. We'll talk about Iran, about Hezbollah. We'll talk as well about what's happening in Epsom. We'll talk about Shabana Mahmood promising action against sham lawyers abusing the asylum system. Whatever you think, however you want to express it, let me know. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who has sent messages in, including Tad, who says Starmer is scared stiff of a full societal breakdown. That unwelcome eventuality is made more likely by his continuation as Prime Minister and not less likely in Tad's opinion. The evidence for that is all around us for everyone to see. His removal from office is therefore of paramount importance. When it comes to integrity, Starmer has none, and that's not the way to give us a nation at peace with itself, says Tad. And thank you to everybody else as well. Brian says, has Leo been promised a knighthood? from Starmer, because how can anyone defend such a slippery character without reward? And thank you to Mark, who says you're confident enough to appreciate guests from a different political spectrum makes 7 till 10 unmissable. Well, Mark, thank you. That's very, very kind of you. And yes, we disagree without being disagreeable on this. Leo and I will happily go for a drink at some stage afterwards, even though he's completely wrong about everything. Anyway, agreed, I am wrong about everything. Let's talk about Shabana Mahmood now. She's promised action against sham lawyers abusing the asylum system. She's promised that people who abuse this system will face the full force of the law. There's a big investigation by journalists at the BBC revealing how law firms and advisors are charging thousands of pounds to help migrants pretend to be gay in order to stay in the UK. James, what do you make of this?
Well, I was shocked to see this, and shocked to see how large the problem of people gaming the system really is. We already knew that there was one industry, the illegal migration industry, which is fueled by the people smugglers, but now we realise that there's another one, the industry of these phony claims coming in their thousands. Now, Mahmood was right to come out strong. I think that the most interesting proposal, though, was actually something that Reform suggested when they spoke about strict liability policy on this, which would mean that there would be no need to prove intent if a legal firm was to be found to be helping with one of these spurious claims. But the other thing that I've not seen a lot of in the discourse around this is the role of the Solicitors Regulation Agency. Being a solicitor in legal practice is a regulated profession and a licence-based profession, and it's really important. And it will probably happen quicker than some of the other legal changes because of how Parliament works, but it's really important that we see that those sham lawyers struck off as quickly as we can.
Leo, what do you make about this and what Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, is attempting to do? Because, of course, if you are gay, being sent back to somewhere like Pakistan or Bangladesh is going to be very problematic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm really happy to see Shabana come out so quickly and so strongly as she did. I think she's proving herself to be a great operator and a great Secretary of State, first and foremost. My biggest concern right now, though, is that a few bad actors are polluting the system for genuine asylum seekers.
There will be people. There will be asylum seekers who are gay, who are fleeing persecution for being gay, who are then under suspicion, saying, "Well, actually, are you gay?" Which is a big issue. And we give asylum to 76% of people who apply for asylum. Now, some of that's after appeals and so on. Clearly, that figure needs to be interrogated at various points and so on. But actually, are these lawyers, these unscrupulous lawyers, just saying, actually, this is a way to perhaps get it through, and they're pulling a fast one, but they're also seeing that the system is perhaps vulnerable?
Yeah, well, there are no safe routes into this country, and barring a couple, say, if you live in Hong Kong. The system is broken from root to branch, and what would you do to get your family and yourself a better, safe life? Would you lie? Would you pay a sham lawyer? Of course you would. And let's not pretend that people cheating systems is something that the asylum seekers do or welfare claimants do. Well, the rich do this more than anybody.
As someone who, as a cub reporter, often went to local magistrates' courts, there were an awful lot of sick relatives that people just had to speed at 75 miles an hour in a 55 mile zone to get to. There were an awful lot of people who seemed they just had a couple of drinks over the limit, yet they had to go to get medicine for their ill mother or whatever. So, I mean, lawyers tell porky pies all the time in courts. So, should we be surprised by this?
No, I think, but we don't drag the rich and wealthy and businesses in front of our courts for evading tax, dodging tax, and they're cheating the system.
Not as much as we should.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, barely ever, really, quite frankly, compared to how much is happening. And there are legal ways to cheat that system, and that's perfectly fine.
Well, that's avoidance rather than evasion.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
What a legal way? Well, yeah, absolutely. But what mad world do we live in? There are legal ways to cheat the system for the rich, but not legal ways to cheat the system for the poor. No, I won't have it.
I avoid tax through an ISA. Do you not have an ISA?
No.
You don't have an ISA?
No, I don't have an ISA.
Because you won't illegally avoid tax?
No.
You won't pay less tax?
I'm too much of a socialist. I am too pure-blooded. I am too ideological.
You're too much of a socialist.
Money. You're not paying me it. Pay me and I'll get an ISA.
Well, get an ISA. James, what do you think of this?
Well, look, ultimately, as a country, we are tolerant, we are welcoming, we do help people in genuine need, and that's something which is important to acknowledge. But it's ordinary people that will bear the brunt of the cost for this. On average, the average taxpayer last year spent 105 quid on asylum support. Now, at a time where the cost of living is really hitting home, the government has got to do whatever it can to lower the costs for British taxpayers. And if tightening loopholes is one of those ways, then it needs to get on with it, and quickly.
I want to pick you up on one of those words, this real bugbear of mine, tolerance. I don't tolerate asylum seekers. I don't tolerate the poor people in this country. I respect everyone who's in this country, everyone who's working hard, wants a job, wants to pull in the right direction. It's nothing personal against you, James. It's the word per se that everyone just throws out there, tolerate. Don't tolerate, respect, love, cherish.
Do you accept and love and cherish people who come to this country illegally?
I completely appreciate their point of view. This is one of the best countries in the world. I think it's the best country in the world. I bloody love it. I'm a patriot. Would I come here for a better life for my family? Would I do anything it took to bring them here, give them a safe life, give them opportunities, not just for one generation,
but thousands of generations? In France, Leo. You can have a safe life and opportunities in France.
Would you want to live in France? No. I certainly don't buy that.
I absolutely would not be getting on a dodgy boat to come across if I had a safe life in France. But that's
have you ever been on a P&O ferry?
All right, well, let's not go down that route. Leo and James will be with us in just a second. We're going to talk about some more of the big issues today. We'll talk about that ceasefire that in between Lebanon and Israel. We'll also talk about Rachel Reeves. She's hiking taxes at the fastest pace in the world, and flight cancellations are going to happen soon, apparently, perhaps even in time for the summer holidays. So stay with us.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday. Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious, since the whole point of this part of the war, well, at least as I thought it, or saw it, was to reopen it. Can anybody explain that? You are not a worthy citizen. You couldn't even spot a murderer in your own house. Well, you could. You just didn't tell anyone about it. Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk. Only at the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you so much for your company here on the Evening Exchange. We're here right through until 10 o'clock. I'm here tomorrow night as well. Alex Phillips is here all of next week filling in for me because I'm teaching a journalism course in political journalism actually next week, but I'll be back the week after, so we're full steam ahead on the 27th. And actually at this point, I was going to do this at the end of the show, but I'll do it right now. I just want to say this is the last evening that I'll be working with Dean Spencer for the foreseeable future. Dean is a great fella who's going off to another part of Talk. He's been my producer for the last few weeks and he's been absolutely absolutely brilliant, very, very reliable, great guy, loads of ideas, and wonderful fun to work with as well. So thank you to him. New producer starting very, very soon. So thank you to Dean for all that he has done. On Mahmood, Lorraine says she's a woman of words and no action. To put her on a pedestal just shows how bad this government are. Chris says, I'm so angry my wife went to the embassy to apply to get to this country and pass all the tests and paid all the fees. Leo says it's okay to lie to get here. What an idiot. Lorraine says, your guest Leo epitomises everything that's wrong with Labour and the left. The hypocrisy is staggering. The media frenzy, including talk presenters, over what Farage may or may not have said decades ago. And yet here we have a Prime Minister who lies when his lips move, has a trail of scandal, deceit and destruction in his wake with the moral compass of a sewer rat. Labour are not fit to govern and the electorate see right through them. Karen in North Wales says, if Starmer only knew about the field security vetting at the beginning of the week as claimed, why did he not take the opportunity during PMQs to correct the record? And in fairness, all three of us, I think, are asking that question, and that'll continue to be asked. A final one from Wendy on you, Leo. You ready?
Oh, I can't wait.
Wendy says, watching your guest justify lying in the seat is excruciating. I hope his mum isn't watching.
Mum, turn away now if you're watching.
That's it. Let's talk about Israel and Lebanon briefly, because we have that ceasefire. We know that that is coming into effect in about an hour and a half. Tough talk, certainly, in Washington, and some sort of tangible outcome by the look of things, Leo.
Yeah, I mean, peace would be great. I mean, do I trust anyone of these actors, Israeli or from the White House? No. But
do you trust the Lebanese? Do you trust Hezbollah?
No.
Okay. James, what do you think?
Well, it's obviously a great first step, but it's important to acknowledge that the conflict is long-term and deep-seated. The current iteration has been bubbling away since the day after the October 7th attacks, and bombing did continue right up until the announcement of this ceasefire. The other thing to say is that there is no mention of Hezbollah in the statement released by Donald Trump. And considering that the Israelis are not just, you know, at war with the Lebanese, but are bombing Hezbollah, it could be a half-baked solution.
And certainly the Lebanese government want Hezbollah to stop and to abide by this. It'll be very interesting to see what happens. We will talk about this more on the programme a little bit later on. We'll get some top analysis between now and 10 o'clock, but I just wanted to ask Leo and James about that briefly. The main thing I want to talk about actually is what the Sun is calling reckless Reeves. Rachel Reeves has been slammed as reckless for hiking taxes at the fastest pace in the world. This is the Chancellor under fire after the International Monetary Fund forecast the UK tax burden will rise to 42.1% of what the country makes of gross domestic product by the early 2030s, the highest tax burden in peacetime, and a leap from 37.6% at the moment. Leo, this is coming off the back of downgraded growth. We were told growth is the main thing, the number one priority. Keir Starmer told us growth is the number one priority of this government. Not so much talk about that anymore. Obviously, we've got the Iran war, and she can't control that. And as Keir Starmer has pointed out on numerous occasions, it is not our war. But clearly, the growth isn't coming. Tell me your thoughts on this and where the taxes should be or not be.
Yeah, well, we didn't legislate for a maniac and a bully and a thug being in the White House, unfortunately, and that is killing off our growth. I mean, we've just had 0.5%. I'm still not too chuffed about that, to be honest with you. I'm less concerned about the tax and more concerned about the spend, quite frankly. I don't think Reeves is running a Labour government whatsoever. She's running the Osbornian economic playbook, which didn't work, which ran this country into the ground.
How is she doing that? What's she doing that you disagree with?
Slightly higher tax, no spend, no investment in our public services on the things that matter to people that we can invest in for the long term. Health, education, housing, that's going to invest in our people and make our country the great place it once was.
I mean, in 2010, the budget of NHS England was 139 billion. It's now over 200 billion. Some people say that's still not enough, but there has been a lot more money put into health, for example. Maybe not by Rachel Reeves, but certainly over the past 16 years that has factually happened. Yet we still have an NHS that outcomes are just not where we want them to be.
Because we're tinkering at the edges. And, you know, I'm no lover of Margaret Thatcher, but the one thing she did do that was great, she burst open the post-war consensus. She said, enough of this garbage, we're going to have a totally new economic model and we're going to have a run at it. And she changed this country for better, for worse. I found her ideology and her approach absolutely abhorrent, but by God, I respect the way she went about it and I respect the things she achieved. I wanted and we need a Labour government that would come in, shake up this rule book, chuck it out the window and have a completely different approach to how we run our economy.
So what should happen in an ideal world, in your view, Leo Watson? What should Rachel Reeves be doing right now?
I mean, I think what she should have done 2 years ago is get some new thinkers around the table and not just take the civil service George Osborne rule book. It's absolutely garbage. It's not what I voted for. I thought we were going to tell a little fib to the public and then actually take a new approach to economics in this country. It's proven for 14 years.
But what is that new approach? Tell me what she should be doing. If you were talking to her right now and you said, this is how you solve the problem, what would you do?
Well, one of the big things I would do is invest hugely in health and social care. I would have a free social care system on the same basis that we have a free
Isn't that going to mean even
system.
higher taxes?
I think it would do in the short term, and that's what we said after the Second World War, and it changed this country forever. It changed this country for the better. It would create thousands more jobs. It would unleash the most economically frustrated people in our society, the people who have to look after the vulnerable in their old age and the people who have to look after the vulnerable through disability. It would unleash their economic potential into the world, into this country, change the game forever, and also, by the way, make us all a lot happier. And is that not the point of economics and government?
I think James Hodgkinson might be about to spontaneously combust. Go ahead.
Look, Labour came into power with a clear promise. They weren't going to increase taxes on working people, and boy oh boy have we seen that change. OK, they've not come out and hiked rates per se, but they've done it by stealth. If you look at income tax thresholds, which in the 2025 budget Labour froze until 2031, by 2031 780,000 more households will be paying the basic rate, 920,000 people will be paying the higher rate, and 44,000 people will be paying the additional rate.
If you'd have grown the economy in 14 years, the Conservative government had grown the economy in 14 years, maybe we could have done something different. The Conservative government destroyed this country. We had the green shoots of growth, Gordon Brown's plan which saved the world economy. You destroyed this country for 14 years and you've got the cheek to point at Rachel Reeves. It makes me sick.
Trust me, I'm not here to defend the Conservative Party, but what I am here to do is say that the policies...
Farage would have done a lot better.
Look, the policies which this government are pursuing are anti-growth. The way that they have taxed individuals, meaning they've got less disposable income, the way that they've taxed businesses with, for example, the employer national insurance contributions. Again, that just means people will get paid less. Look at the Employment Rights Act, which is going to cost businesses £1 billion. OK, there are important provisions, but it is, in my view, overreaching. And finally, minimum wage. And as a young person, I feel I can talk about this. Minimum wage
That's harsh.
Minimum wage going up is great for the people that have got a job, of course it is, but it will mean that there are less jobs on the market, and that is a bad thing. We need to be helping people into work, and making companies less able to hire people is not the way we go about that.
I bet James was cheering the day Liz Truss walked into Downing Street, and I bet he won't tell you that now. He'll be telling his little fibs now, but all of that lot on the right, all of the Adam Smith Institute lot, absolutely cheering from the rafters when she came in. Thanks for ruining our lives. Thanks for making my mortgage doubly expensive. Thanks for ruining the country.
Did you welcome Liz Truss into number 10?
Of course he did.
Look, personally, and this is a purely personal view, I would have much preferred Sunak in straight away. But look, by the time Truss got in...
You said you weren't defending the Tories a second ago. You want Sunak in? Oh, yeah, he's proper Tory.
I'm saying that of the two...
the choice between Sunak... Yeah. OK, the choice is Sunak or Truss. Who would you choose?
Oh, Sunak every day.
Well, there we go. That's all he's saying.
That's all I'm saying. And what I would say is that at the end of the day, this Labour government had a massive majority, and what I will agree with you on, because I do like to find common ground with people, is that we need politicians with conviction, and sadly I don't think we've got that from this Labour government.
When it comes to the level of tax, there are many people in a cost of living crisis, especially many employers, the SMEs, the backbone of this country. Many of them ringing me saying, there was a guy a couple of weeks, was it about a month ago, I think, where he said, he owns a pizza restaurant, he employs 8 people, he wanted to open another one, national insurance came in, can't do it anymore, just not going to turn a profit. And maybe that's something you disagree with as well, Leo, or maybe you think national insurance rises are a good thing. But the fact is, when taxes are put up on small businesses, it strangles growth, doesn't it? It strangles the private sector employment.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I want a new deal in our economy. I absolutely feel for the small business owners. I do think it's massively part of what the Conservatives did.
But you're saying raise taxes as well.
And it's also
where does the money? Hold on a second. Sorry. Where does the money come from?
I wish I had the answer. I wish I was an economic expert. Unfortunately, I'm just a humble political strategist. So I can tell you how to comms things up, but I can't tell you how to run an economy. What I would like to see is some brave new thinking. I would like to see some 1945-esque brains around the table to change the direction of this country. And yes, actually 1979-esque brains around the table who are going to rip up the rule book and start start all over again.
OK, rip up the rule book, start all over again. What does Britain look like for you, James?
Well, look, first of all, I'd just like to address the SME point. The Employment Rights Act, the Adam Smith Institute, has estimated that will cost SMEs £650 million.
God forbid we give workers rights. That'll be awful.
I'm not saying that all
I hate it. I'm against it.
I'm not saying that all the provisions are a bad thing, but what I am saying is that what we are seeing is colossal overreach from the state on that one. We do need to rip up the rule book. We do need to deregulate. But the way we do that is we give people money in their pockets to spend how they wish. This idea that we do some sort of skewed top-down collectivism is just not the answer.
I don't think we're going to get agreement on that one somehow. Let's talk about two of Europe's biggest airlines. They've cancelled hundreds of flights to combat soaring fuel costs caused by the Iran war. Lufthansa announcing plans to shut down its regional airline. KLM cancelling 160 flights for the coming month. There are many other airlines talking about the major problems with fuel costs. Of course, this all goes back to the Strait of Hormuz and the 20% of oil in the world that's going through there. Leo, what are your thoughts around this?
It seems like it's coming, doesn't it? And how prepared are we? I'm not sure. The government doesn't want to scare the public, whether that be about shortage of fuel in aviation or shortage of fuel at the pump. But I mean, I don't really think there's much more to say on the matter, really.
Do we have the petrol pump figures there that we can put on the screen? This was really interesting. Nigel Howard, who's a great friend of this programme, sent me this earlier today. He's a professional photographer, and this Nigel Howard Media is where this is from. Now, this is in Chelsea and London, and obviously Chelsea and London is one of the most expensive parts of the country. But if we just look at how much a litre of petrol costs, this is unleaded at 289.9. Nigel sent that in to me, 289.9 for a litre of unleaded petrol. And then when it goes to diesel, it's nearly £3 for a litre of diesel. Now, fair enough, this is in Chelsea, this isn't right throughout the country, but clearly what we're seeing, James, is very, very high petrol and diesel prices.
It is deeply concerning, and what the director of the International Energy Agency said today was that we had 6 weeks of jet fuel left, and what we were facing was, and I'll quote him here, the largest energy crisis ever. And that's borne out in what the IEA are doing about this. So in response to the 2022 Russia-Ukraine war, they released 82 million barrels of oil. In response to Iran, that's 400 million. OK, the UK and Europe have been hit especially hard. And the diagnosis, I think, is relatively simple, and that's that we've failed to keep drilling ourselves, we've failed to keep exploiting the North Sea for what it's worth. Over 200 fields are active today, only 100 will be by 2030. And look, I'm a big believer in a diverse energy mix, but what I say is when the crisis is this existential, we need to put ideology to one side and get as much resource from as many sources as we can to try and help the public, because that's what's important here.
Leo, drill, baby, drill?
Yeah, and I think it's a fight Ed Miliband's going to lose in Cabinet. One of the first fights he's lost in a long time. I think we will announce that. So, yeah, no, I actually, James, you said you like to agree with people. I haven't agreed with you much tonight, and I've been unfair on you. So I absolutely agree with that. I think it's in the public interest. Let's do what we need to do.
Sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows everywhere. Thank you both very, very much indeed. Leo Watson, political strategist, and James Hodgkinson, research associate at the Adam Smith Institute. Really brilliant to have you both on the debate desk. What did you think about what they both said there? 0344 499 1000. We will take some calls in the next hour. Certainly, I can see people who want to get in on Mandelson, who want to get in on Epsom, on the ceasefire, on Starmer, on what the Iranians are saying. Whatever your point, whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, do give me a shout and we'll make sure we get you on the air. In the meantime, thanks to our debate desk panellists. Another one tomorrow night, every night on the programme between about 7:20 and 8 o'clock. We have our debate desk, and of course your comments are very, very welcome too. Plenty coming up, including on Epsom straight after the break. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you so much to everybody who's been in touch. We'll get your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes very, very soon. Lots of people being very kind and welcoming me back. I was off yesterday, but I'm here today and tomorrow and lots to discuss. We'll talk about the Epsom riots in a second, the protesters demanding CCTV of the suspects in that alleged gang rape. We'll also talk about Mandelson, the political editor at the Huffington Post, will talk us through all of the scandal, everything that the government is saying that is true, who should go as well as a very, very big question. We'll also talk about the US and Iran, the ceasefire agreed between Israel and Lebanon. But where does Hezbollah come into all of that? Another issue sent in by a listener to this programme, and thank you. If you ever think we should be covering something, just send it in, just email me or send it on WhatsApp or whatever you want to do on Twitter. Digital learning. This is someone who flagged to me that Sweden's schools are cutting back on digital learning. Are there too many screens in our schools? What about books? Should books be back? This is a big story we're going to talk about. We're also going to talk about the Green Party and has it become Islamist? The former deputy leader of that party joins me live. So much to discuss, so many ways to discuss it. Between now and 10 o'clock, do get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk. Well, thank you to everybody who's been in touch. As I say, we will get back to your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes in a minute or two. I want to talk about what's happening in Epsom, and the crime and policing journalist and former advisor to Yvette Cooper is Danny Shaw, who's with me now. Danny, it's great to have you on the programme because you just give it to us straight up and down what's happened and what we're being told or not told. I think a lot of my viewers and listeners are asking this evening, first of all, what happened? But secondly, why aren't we being told about the suspects? Because there have been numerous times where we've been told suspects' ethnicities, backgrounds, nationalities. That doesn't seem to be the case with Epsom. Just talk us through this issue.
So first of all, the facts. A woman in her 20s was raped in the early hours of Saturday morning in Epsom after leaving the Labyrinth nightclub. And she was raped near a church, near Epsom Methodist Church, by several people. And they haven't been apprehended at this current moment in time. And Surrey Police is the force that's investigating. Now, I think there's a bit of confusion here. When police have got a suspect in custody, when someone has been arrested, there is now guidance on them that in high-profile cases, they should release the ethnicity and the nationality of that individual. And that is a direct result of what happened with Axel Rudikabana and the Southport attacks, when there were no details about him and his ethnicity, his nationality, and rumours were allowed to spread that he'd arrived on a small boat and so on. He was an asylum seeker, which was complete nonsense and wasn't true. And the police and the Crown Prosecution Service in particular sort of limited the flow of information. Things have changed since then, and the police are now being encouraged to put that information out there, and there is guidance to that effect. But there are no suspects in custody in this case. No one has been arrested. No one has been arrested, let alone charged. So we're in a slightly different scenario. And people like Sir Michael Ellis, the former Conservative
Solicitor General, Attorney General as well,
coming out and saying this is exactly like Axel Rudikabana. No, it is not, Sir Michael, and you should know better. We're in a different situation. The police want to identify these three men. Everyone wants these three people to be apprehended and brought to justice, okay? And when police have good descriptions of them so that the public can assist, I am 100% certain they will issue those descriptions, whether they have footage or whether they don't have footage or not, or whether they've just got descriptions from witnesses. They will do that when they're ready. But to issue some kind of partial description when they're not completely clear about the type of person that they're looking for, their colour, their size, their build, etc., would actually be very poor detective work and police work.
Two questions within that. What is the threshold? What constitutes a high-profile case? And secondly, is it credible that in 6 days since this has happened, they don't have a suspect a description that they could even put out? I'm not talking about necessarily giving ethnicities or ages or anything like that, but any information about the people who are alleged to have done this.
Well, I think the first thing, that threshold, as I said, only applies when police have a suspect under arrest. But high profile, I don't think there's a hard and fast rule about that. But essentially, if a member of the media calls up and says, you know you've made an arrest in that case, can you tell me the ethnicity and nationality of that individual? The police guidance is they should tell the media and inform the media unless there's a very good reason not to do so. So that's clear about that. This is clearly a high profile case. I mean, Epsom is not a place where you expect crimes like this to happen. And it's a completely horrific crime for the local community, and I understand the concern. Peter, what was your second question?
My second question was about, is it credible that 6 days later, this having been reported, and they've spoken extensively to the victim, that there is no information 6 days later? They can't tell us anything about this, because whilst I totally understand where you're coming from, you know the procedures back to front, and your credibility on this is exactly the reason why I'm talking to you right now and we have you on the programme. Nonetheless, there are a lot, and it's nothing to do with you, it's the police force that people are saying, hold on a second, why can't they tell us anything? Are they covering something up? You've got people on the streets of Epsom to put some information into the public domain, even if it's incomplete, would possibly make those people go home and or at least try to assist the police with their inquiries, would it not?
I am slightly surprised that, as you said, 6 days later, they don't have information, whether they haven't, perhaps they don't have the footage of the CCTV. It's possible. We know that CCTV coverage is not complete and that some cameras don't work, or that, the footage isn't very good. And it could be that the victim's recollections are very hazy, understandably, and she's very traumatized.
Yes.
So it could be that it's just not clear enough. I do think, however, that the police in general will release the descriptions of people they're trying to trace as quickly as they can, unless there is another line of inquiry and they don't need that information in the public domain. Now, that is possible. They may have a line of inquiry that they haven't told us about, and that they're going to find these three individuals and they don't need to release descriptions. But in this case, I have to give them, at the moment, Peter, the benefit of the doubt and say the descriptions are so unclear that they don't think that there is a public benefit in releasing that information at the moment until there's greater clarity. I have to give them the benefit of the doubt on that. This is a good performing force, Surrey Police, and I'm sure they've got some good detectives working on it. It's well led. So you have to give them the benefit of the doubt on this. But for people to try and sort of make something out of this, I think at this stage, I think is a distortion. I understand where people are coming from. They think that there's some information police are trying to hide, and they're worried about community tensions, because if they say the three suspects were all black or of mixed race, or something like that, then it's going to spark some tensions, and people are going to say, oh, it's asylum seekers, it's migrants living from a hotel.
But what's happened, Danny, already, the lack of information, the vacuum is being filled here, isn't it? There are people who are not like you, giving Surrey Police the benefit of the doubt and think, actually, there's something being kept from us. Now, that may or may not be true, but the fact is people are on the streets right now. That is a major aspect of what Surrey Police are having to deal with. They've got riot police with shields on the streets. So how can and should they deal with that?
Well, what police have to do is to get out there front and centre and communicate a bit better and explain the situation. And, if that needs the Chief Constable or Deputy Chief Constable, Assistant Chief Constable to come out and say, look, we are trying to be on the front foot on this. Once we've got a description, we will issue it, but we haven't got, a clear description of the attackers for whatever reasons. They don't have to go into those operational reasons, or we're pursuing other lines of inquiry and we are confident there are going to be developments very soon and the suspects will be in custody. They probably have to be more open and explain a bit better than they're doing at the moment. I'm not saying that can fill the vacuum, but it's very important that the police are more on the front foot.
Danny, thank you. That's Danny Shaw there, crime and policing journalist. He's also a former advisor to Yvette Cooper. Let's speak to Chris, who's in Epsom. He has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Chris, are we getting the full story here?
No, Danny Shaw's obfuscating to maintain his connections within the police force and the Home Office.
I don't think he's obfuscating, is he? I mean, there's nothing that he... hold on, Chris. Hold on. There's nothing that Danny Shaw knows that he's not telling us.
Look. Let me say this first. My family have been in Epsom for 55 years. The centre of Epsom, where the nightclub is, the centre point of a spider's web of cameras starts just outside the club, and it spreads out in every direction for about 3/4 of a mile to a mile, way past the church. The church also has 8 cameras around it. I've sent you an X post from somebody that says they've got a whistleblower. They publicly put their name out there. It's not somebody that's Goo Gaga 69 or something. He's actually put his name to it. He's put his company to it. They're putting a KC to it. The police know who did the crime, and I believe a DMSA was...
Okay, how do you know, Chris, that the police know who did it? How do you know that?
No, I didn't say that. I said that the chap that has posted it,
okay,
who has offered a KC, and I sent you the post, has offered a KC and to take this up and to take the government, the police and the government to task over this, because they are lying.
Why do you think they're lying? Why do you think why is it your view that they're lying?
The whole system in Epsom is a day and night vision system. It was upgraded in 22 and 23.
So do you, are you, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Chris, but are you basically saying it's not credible that they don't have CCTV, they don't have at least some description of these suspects?
Absolutely, 100%. No doubt in my mind whatsoever. Even if they were masked up, even if they wore balaclavas, they haven't walked all the way through the town all the time with those balaclavas. They would have descriptions of their height, weight, clothing, etc., etc., etc. Now, all the people in Epsom know that. We know that the CCTV there works, and it works very, very well. It's integrated with the shopping mall. It's integrated with the cameras in Worcester Park and Stoneleigh. It's a very, very upmarket system. Believe me, it's far, far better than you normally get in a town. It's as good as you get in Oxford Street, if not better. Now, people are near boiling point over this because of the vacuum that's been created.
So what advice, Chris, to bring the boiling point down to a reasonable temperature, what advice would you give Surrey Police right now? Because they say, anyway, you don't believe them, but they say they're in a position where they can't give any descriptions of these suspects. How could they, is there a halfway point? Is there something they could say that would actually satisfy you and various people who are very unhappy about this, including some people who've come out onto the streets?
I would imagine that the investigation and the riot police and everything yesterday, and there was no, the riot police did try to provoke a response. They did try to push through the crowd, and it was the boys turned around and said, "No violence, don't let them have their way," and they gave up and walked back.
Okay. Okay.
So now, listen, what I would say to the police is that silver or gold commander, plus the deputy commissioner or the commissioner, need to sit down at the town hall and talk to the people of Epsom and answer the questions. And they must admit what they have or what they don't have and not lie.
Okay.
Because the chap that's posted says that he's got somebody, and it's obviously an official.
Well, we don't know the veracity of that claim, Chris. But listen, thank you very much for that. I'm sure Surrey Police would deny that there was any attempt to provoke things. Although Chris and others, of course, believe there was. I wasn't there. I don't know. I'm simply being clear about what Surrey Police, I'm sure, would say. Kevin Schofield is with us now because this big story about Mandelson, about the Prime Minister, about who knew what when, is a huge one in Westminster and beyond. So many of our viewers and listeners want to get in on this. We'll talk to Dennis in Cheshire in just a second. Dennis, I know you're listening right now, so just be a little bit patient with me if you would, because I want to talk to Kevin first. Let's just remind ourselves, even before I speak to Kevin, about what Starmer said about the full due process being followed. This was the Prime Minister on the 10th of September last year.
As she and the House would expect, full due process was followed during this appointment, as it is with all ambassadors. The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret. He is right to do so. He's now playing an important part in the US-UK relationship. Mr. Speaker, as I say, full due process was gone through in relation to this appointment, as would be expected. As for the publication of documents, as she well knows, that's subject to a procedure which includes an independent element. Be subject to the usual procedure.
Kemi Badenoch says that wasn't good enough then. She says now, given what we know, given what The Guardian has reported today, that Peter Mandelson failed the vetting, failed developed vetting, something I was in the process of myself at one stage. It's a very, very intrusive form of vetting, and it's something that really the very senior people, like the ambassador to America, should have to pass. Well, Kemi Badenoch, speaking today, alleges that Keir Starmer misled Parliament.
Three serious concerns here. The first one is that on the 10th of September, the Prime Minister misled Parliament by saying the full due process was followed. If Mandelson failed the security vetting, full due process was not followed. Misleading Parliament is a resigning offence. On the 5th of February, at a press conference in Hastings, the Prime Minister said that Peter Mandelson cleared the vetting process. This is not true. That means he broke the ministerial code by saying something deliberately untrue. He misled the country. And the third thing is that it looks like there's been a cover-up, because we had a humble address in Parliament where we asked for all of the documents. This did not come out then. It's gone to the press. That means that something was being covered up.
Kevin Schofield is the political editor at HuffPost UK. Kevin, thanks for joining us this evening. How big a crisis is this for the Prime Minister? It is absolutely extraordinary that he is alleging that he was not told that the person who was going to be ambassador to the United States failed their vetting.
Yeah, you're right. It's absolutely extraordinary. Some might say unbelievable, actually. I mean, either way, I think it is bad for Keir Starmer. Either he knew and misled the country, or he wasn't told. And the fact that he's a Prime Minister, to be kept in the dark, what does that say about his authority over the government, about the internal processes in the government? That something as key as the appointment of the UK ambassador to America, if his hand-picked appointee did not pass the vetting process and he was not informed of this before the job became official, I find it absolutely extraordinary. Now, there's a huge clean-up operation inside Number 10 going on now. They're distancing themselves from it. They're effectively trying to throw the Foreign Office officials under the bus and saying this was entirely on them. They knew about it. They overruled the security vetting to give this this higher tier of vetting so that he could take up the role. We were kept in the dark. I think that is just such a bad look for Number 10. To say a big boy did it and ran away really is pretty unimpressive, I think.
Surely what you do, and what I sometimes did, was, as a special advisor when I worked in government, was call everybody in who knew everything about the issue that had gone horribly wrong, sit them all down and say, give it to me straight. Tell me every single thing that happened. I don't care whether it makes you look dreadful, whether it makes you look like a hero, whatever it is, just talk me through what happened, who knew what when, get a full timeline of the issue, and then you can actually start to deal with that from a strategic political view. We're also told, one of our colleagues in the lobby and the Westminster journalist from Bloomberg, saying that the Prime Minister may have known about this 2 days ago. And I mean, the point is, if you mislead Parliament, you've got to correct the record as soon as is practically necessary. He was in Parliament yesterday and did not do that.
Absolutely, you're right. I mean, Number 10 actually conceded that that the Prime Minister discovered this earlier in the week. And you're right, we're now told via Bloomberg that this was Tuesday. And yet the Prime Minister was there, Prime Minister's questions. He had the perfect opportunity to stand up. And I think if he tried to get ahead of it before it was leaked to the press, then I think he might have come out of it with at least a little bit of credit. But the fact now that it seems to have been sort of dragged out of Number 10, kicking and screaming this story, he's now playing defence, and it's just a terrible look. And we thought that the Mandelson story had gone quiet. We knew it hadn't gone away. We knew that there were more documents to come at some point in the future, but we thought that it had died down a little bit. But this just completely puts it back onto the front pages. It calls into question the Prime Minister's judgment, the Prime Minister's authority, and it's just a very bad look. And it's in keeping with everything we've learnt about this story all along, that come hell or high water, Number 10 wanted Peter Mandelson to be the ambassador. It didn't matter what was in his background. Nothing. It didn't matter about what they knew about his links with Jeffrey Epstein. All that was known, and yet they still wanted him. But Keir Starmer didn't even bother speaking to him personally before giving him the job. So it all makes sense, really, that the vetting, failing the vetting process was no barrier either, despite the fact that Keir Starmer told us he had passed the vetting process. So, yeah, Number 10 and Keir Starmer are in a whole world of pain this evening.
What about the Foreign Office? Have they said anything? I would imagine their permanent secretary, as Oliver Robbins, the most senior civil servant in there, would have a few views on this. Surely every journalist is now ringing the Foreign Office saying, hold on a second, is this true?
Yeah, well, they're keeping tight-lipped, as you can imagine. They're directing all calls to Number 10. The Number 10 statement is the government position, but you're right, it's hugely embarrassing. If we take the Number 10 statement at face value, it makes the Foreign Office, and you're right, Ollie Robbins in particular as the permanent secretary, all sorts of questions over if what Number 10 are telling us is true, why on earth did he, one, decide to overrule the security services who carried out the initial vetting, and two, decide not to tell anyone in Number 10, including the Prime Minister. It just absolutely beggars belief, and serious questions being asked of the Foreign Office as well.
What happens now, Kevin? Because if Prime Minister's questions was tomorrow, which mercifully for Keir Starmer it isn't, surely you just say, hold on a second, so you're telling us you didn't know, you were misled by your own officials who you're meant to be the boss of, and then when you knew there was a scandal, you didn't ask for every single piece of information that you could conceivably get. Those are the questions for Keir Starmer, I would argue, amongst many, many others, as well as the fact that he says, I'm Mr. Detail, I'm Mr. Process, I'm all for getting to the bottom of the issue, when clearly in this occasion he didn't. So was he willfully ignorant, or is he incompetent?
Well, those are the questions that are going to be asked as soon as he sticks his head above the parapet. Now, we understand that he will be appearing in public tomorrow. So again, even if he does, it's further damaging his reputation, which, as we already know, is not great, certainly amongst the public. And that's the other thing. The public are not willing to give Keir Starmer the benefit of any doubt right now. They've already made up their mind. You've only got to look at the opinion polls, his own approval ratings to see. And people will just look at this and say, well, either he's lying, he's incompetent, and neither is a good look.
And at this exact moment, there'll be many people staring at their ballot papers for the local elections who have postal votes as well. Today, apparently, is one of the key days where people think, right, 3 weeks out, got to fill this in because obviously they've got to get them back in time. Kevin, thank you. This political editor at Huffington Post UK. Dan and Dennis are on the line. We'll speak to them in just a second. Got to take a short break so we can get our salaries paid. If you want to get on the line like Dan and Dennis, your reaction to anything you've heard in the last 25 minutes or beyond, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday. Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious, since the whole point of this part of the war, well, at least as I thought it, or saw it, was to reopen it. Can anybody explain that? You are not a worthy citizen. You couldn't even spot a murderer in your own house. Well, you could. You just didn't tell anyone about it. Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk. Only at the home of common sense.
Dennis is in Cheshire. Dennis, you're a patient man. Thank you for waiting. What would you like to say about the Prime Minister?
Oh, dear me. Where do we start?
Well, it's a very good point. It is extraordinary.
An actual fact, it's about journalism, really. I don't think I've ever stood by a journalist. I don't know, a reporter. But how do these reporters on occasions get hold of these big stories? The only thing that I can think about at the minute is that did somebody in MI5, MI6 release a little bit to actually start the conversation going? Because the credibility of the vetting procedure has also been knocked sideways by people saying that he went through, Mandelson went through the correct procedures and, if you like, came out with a star.
Let me tell you something, Dennis. After 20 years of working as a reporter, a correspondent, a political editor, and as a special advisor, I've learned many things. But one of them is, in Westminster, in Whitehall, in public life, everybody has an agenda. Every single person has an agenda, and someone has an agenda, I would imagine, maybe within the security services, to be told, hold on a second, the Prime Minister says the vetting was done correctly. They know they did their bit of the vetting correctly, MI5 and the vetting services, saying, hold on a second, we said he wasn't up to the job. It's the Foreign Office who are to blame. Getting that information in the public domain is in that person's agenda. Now, I'm not sure it's going to bring down the Prime Minister necessarily, but it gives us more information about what has happened. Those reporters at The Guardian did a very, very good job. It's not often I say that, but they did on this occasion, and we know more about it. What should the Prime Minister do now?
Well, certainly not have a row with the Speaker. Is that part of the story? Maybe it is. I mean, the Speaker was certainly very annoyed with Keir Starmer yesterday. They had words after Prime Minister's questions. I don't know how much, if anything, the Speaker knows about this, but if he's just learned about this as we're learning about it, Sir Lindsay Hoyle is going to be absolutely livid that the convention is that rules are that if you know you have misled Parliament, which the Prime Minister appears to have done, you go back ASAP as soon as you possibly can and correct the record. We're told by another journalist from Bloomberg that the Prime Minister knew about this on Tuesday. Well, in that case, then that's probably why he was banging desks or whatever he was doing, rowing with the Speaker, because the Speaker did mention, was it just before the recess, that when he was asked, as a point of order, about Starmer not answering the questions properly that he'd been asked by Kimmy during question time, and he said that he wasn't in a position to actually tell anybody.
No, it's interesting. The Speaker certainly being a bit more bolshy yesterday, a bit more holding the Prime Minister to account, I would argue anyway. Dennis, what should Keir Starmer do right now?
Jack the job in.
Okay. You have no confidence in him anymore?
Well, I mean, how do you trust the man?
Mm-hmm.
How do you trust the people that he's got around him? Because now you're talking about the Foreign Office overriding what the vetting process said. And now, I think it was Kevin earlier on, read a memo from the then Home Secretary saying that the vetting had gone through all right and everything was A-OK. So that brings the ex-Foreign Secretary in the firing line.
David Lammy. Well, he says he wasn't told anything, and indeed the statement from Number 10 alleges that he wasn't told anything. Dennis, really good points there. Thank you for that. Dan in Liverpool. Dan, do you trust the Prime Minister?
No, I do not trust the Prime Minister. I think this man is evil to the core and a traitor to the UK.
Those are very strong words, Dan. Why do you say that?
Oh, he claims to not know about anything. He didn't know about Jimmy Savile. He didn't know about the Horizon Post Office. He didn't know about the grooming gangs. He says he doesn't know about this. I am going to call Keir Starmer a liar. I would not trust him if my life depended on him. If anything, he should walk down to Tower Hill and he should face a punishment fitting of a traitor.
Okay, well, we need to be really, really careful that we're not advocating for anybody to lose their life or anything like that. But you think anyway, Dan, you're clearly very, very unhappy with him. Presumably you want him to resign ASAP?
Of course I want him to resign, but what's going to happen? Oh, the same as every other leader, he goes and sells a book deal. Where's the accountability? Do you know what? This is the worst thing I could probably say, and I love this country. I'm literally almost having to hold back tears right now. I would rather Putin be in charge, because I'd rather live under a dictator who tells the people where they are than someone who lies to us every single time.
Gosh, I can't agree with you on that, Dan, but sorry, make your final point. Make your final point. Go on ahead.
My final point is, what's a rule for? Is it just us plebs need to accept our place?
I mean, he argues that he wasn't told. He says he wasn't told.
He said he hasn't been told about a lot of stuff. This is just another one of his lies.
Okay.
You have a lovely night, Peter, and I'm really sorry, but I think it's over for the UK with this people in charge.
Goodness me. Well, Dan, listen, thank you for your views. Really appreciate them. And just to be absolutely clear, we're not advocating anybody does anything violent against any politician we've had, of course. Not that Dan was doing that. I think he was speaking sort of metaphorically there, but certainly we've had MPs targeted and things like that. We absolutely don't want that to happen. But Dan, very clear that he believes the Keir Starmer should resign. What do you think about this? 0344 499 1000. Thank you to John in Suffolk as well. He says, let's not forget the average pay rise of 3.3% for Agenda for Change workers alone in the US will cost an additional £2 billion. That does not even take into account rises for those in doctor grades, just talking about the public purse and what is happening there. And they should check for previous footage, says this person, I think perhaps in regard to Epsom. And on that, actually, someone's got in touch with me and said, let me put a hypothesis to you. The victim of this horrendous rape may have some forensic DNA, positive DNA. Let's just leave it at 8:30 at night without going into any more detail on that. But I'm sure most people know what I'm talking about. This may take days to profile in a lab. Releasing any description early may result in the suspect or suspects disappearing. If and when the profile is available, suspects will be arrested and hopefully the case will be proven. So a different perspective on Epsom there. Very, very interesting, and thank you for it to that person. We'll talk about the US, Iran, Lebanon, Israel, Hezbollah in a second. Major moves there. Donald Trump speaking a little bit earlier on at the White House. We'll get top analysis from Colonel Simon Diggins in just a moment. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who's been in touch. Quite a number of tweets. I've just been looking at some of them. One actually is worth reading out from my colleague Julia Hartley-Brewer. She says, just to be clear, Lord Mandelson, a proven liar, failed security vetting to be the UK's most senior diplomat, trusted with vital state and security secrets. But no one at the Foreign Office bothered to tell the Prime Minister or anyone else at number 10 about that. Do they seriously expect us to believe this claptrap? How dumb do they think we are? The Prime Minister is either a liar or a fool. Either way, he has to resign. That is Julia Hartley-Brewer. Tune in for more of her insights, not tomorrow, but indeed on Monday. She will be back at 10 o'clock. Nigel says, surely he should be sacking David Lammy at the very least. For the then Foreign Secretary not to know what his civil servants were doing is beyond belief, says Nigel of Starmer. Another person says, you have a great show, Peter, and it's great that you have two sides of the debate. It's even more impressive that you have childish, gobby, echo chamber, bubble-dwelling, sixth form lefty activist imbeciles on too. Just get them to keep digging that hole with their dribble. Can't think who you're referring to. Henry says, the problem is, if Starmer goes bad as he is, what follows will be worse. The pound will collapse. Remember when he said he stood up for his staff and took the responsibility when something went wrong? Simon says, who's this guest of yours earlier who says nobody cares if Starmer lied to Parliament? That is disgraceful. That was Leo, who was on with us earlier on. Another person says, it maybe is the case that Mandelson's developed vetting application was rejected on the grounds that he had not been open and honest when answering questions. Applicants are asked to be fully transparent. If they're not, this is viewed as a reason to reject. Yes, when I was in the early stages of developed vetting, I never went any further because I left the Home Office. I was told, you know, you've got to tell them the truth. Just assume they know the truth. And they do ask you all sorts of pretty personal questions, you know, about your relationships and internet history and if you've ever taken drugs and all that kind of stuff. But he failed that, and then the Foreign Office overruled that. Why did they do that? Did they do that because they thought they had to? And why was the Prime Minister not told? Or was he told, actually, is a big issue as well. Colonel Simon Diggins is a military defence analyst, and I want to talk about the US, Iran, and Hezbollah and Lebanon and Israel. But Simon, maybe I can ask you first, actually, if you don't mind. Presumably you went through developed vetting.
Peter, good evening. Yes, I did. And you get a kind of refresh on it from time to time, and exactly what you just said. You know, the line is basically you have to tell the truth on it. I mean, they will absorb quite a lot. I mean, they're not very worried, actually, provided you tell them the truth. I mean, it doesn't really matter what you've done, provided it's not overtly criminal. But if you tell them the truth, and you know, let's face it, particularly if you're younger, you sometimes make stupid or foolish mistakes. But if you tell them that, generally speaking, that's accepted, and you can move on with it.
I'm not going to ask you to comment on a political issue, Simon, but just as a final question on vetting, did you know anyone in the military who had failed it and then went on to a senior role because they sort of said, oh, well, it doesn't matter about the vetting?
No, is the answer. It's a very short answer. I'm not aware of that at all.
Well, that I think speaks volumes, and we will continue to talk about that story. But let's ask you what you're on to talk about, and thank you for taking that question, Simon. I appreciate that. On the US, on Iran, specifically on the ceasefire that is coming into place very, very shortly when it comes to Israel and Lebanon. What do you make of that, and do you think we can be hopeful that Hezbollah will accede to it, essentially?
We hope so. I think the pressure has really come from the US, because I think having a ceasefire in Lebanon, I think, is the key to unlocking Iran making a ceasefire deal with the US. And the fact that this was part of the original complaint of Iran was that they thought when they had the start of the ceasefire, well, 10, 11 days ago now, that there was going to be a concomitant ceasefire in the Lebanon. That hasn't actually happened. So I think the pressure is coming from the US to do that. But it's also fair to say that Hezbollah themselves are very reluctant to have a ceasefire, not least with because the conversation then is then going to turn to a conversation where it looks like between Israel and Lebanon. And I think the point that the Israelis are going to say to Lebanon is, look, we can live with you as our neighbours, but we can't live with you as our neighbours if you continue to harbour within your midst effectively an enemy entity. So really, as a country, Lebanon, you now need to take control of your own security. Because at the moment, the real problem with Lebanon, there's a Lebanese army, there's a Lebanese Air Force, Lebanese Navy, and the Israelis say, you know, we don't have any fights with them whatsoever. But basically, Lebanon does not control its own military, because the bigger military they've got there is Hezbollah.
Yes, so when those leaders come together, I mean, Trump is trumpeting this, saying it's absolutely marvellous, first time in 44 years that they've come together, they'll be at the White House. There is a lot of reason for caution, isn't there?
I think there is, not least of which because Hezbollah will have every reason to destabilise the situation. It's not in their interest then to be eradicated by the Lebanese armed forces, who would then presumably get the full benefit of all support that Israel, indeed the Americans, could give them in order to remove Hezbollah. So, I mean, they are going to look to try and spoil this. It's obviously in Israel's interest for the Lebanese military, the Lebanese state, to take control. So I think they'll be very cautious about doing that, though they have reserved, as always, the right of self-defense. So if Hezbollah then break the ceasefire, the Israelis may well react back from there. So there's a lot at stake over the next couple of days.
How does this feed into the Iran issue? Because it's a separate conflict, but it is, of course, linked, not least because Hezbollah is a proxy of Iran.
No, and I think that's exactly the crucial point. I mean, it's that, that if this ceasefire can be made to hold in the Lebanon, then I think Trump can then go back to the Iranians and say, look, I've given you the bit you said was missing in terms of this. Now let's have the deal. Let's now talk about the things that you really want to talk about, which we'll call number one of which is the nuclear weapons, or at least the potential to develop nuclear weapons, which the Iranians have got.
Yes, certainly. And when it comes to the Straits of Hormuz, what is your view on how things are going there with the blockade and so on, especially as, I mean, we saw today at a professional photographer who happens to listen to the programme sending me the price of, can we see that up on the screen actually, the price of petrol and diesel in London. Now, fair enough, this is in Chelsea, which is a very expensive part of London, of course, but at this particular filling station, this is Nigel Howard, I should say, at Nigel Howard Media, who sent me this photograph showing that the price of a litre of unleaded is 289 pence a litre, 289.9 pence a litre, and then when it goes to diesel, which is always a bit more expensive, Nigel spotted and sent me the picture to show that it is 299.9, nearly £3 for a litre of diesel. We're feeling this right here, Simon. What is happening in the Straits of Hormuz that you think is positive, negative or otherwise?
Sure. I mean, I think both sides at the moment are still effectively maintaining their double blockade. Very few ships have ventured forth. There was some indication today that some ships had got through, but they appeared to have indicated they were going to go to Iraq first and then seemed to diverted. But very few ships are coming in the way. And US Central Command has said they've turned back a number of ships that are either bound for or trying to leave Iranian ports. So both sides are effectively blockading the area at the moment. What is particularly interesting, though, is the reaction of the Gulf states themselves, because they are worried, they're genuinely worried that the US will create a deal which will suit the US, means they can withdraw from the position they're in and effectively then leave the Straits of Hormuz under the control of the Iranians, not least of which because the Iranians have got this idea of having a toll for people moving through there from there. So they are kind of encouraging America to see this through to the bitter end, whatever that bitter end needs to be. So that's one pressure that's on them. And the US government is now also under pressure from its own oil majors, who are also saying it's not acceptable for them for Iran to be left holding the Straits of Hormuz. So, while I think a lot of the world would breathe much easier if the Straits of Hormuz were open and free, there are people, not just the Israelis, not just some American hawks, who are saying almost the opposite and saying, no, we need to see this through to the bitter end.
Yeah. Simon, as always, thank you. That's Colonel Simon Diggins, military defence analyst, former senior officer in the UK Army. Michael in Hertfordshire has some thoughts on this. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Michael, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good evening. I'll say let's get real about the problem. The Lebanese country is a lovely country. They were supposed to disarm Hezbollah a year ago. They can't do it. They're not strong enough.
Yeah.
Israel never started this. The rockets were sent from Hezbollah into northern Israel, and they started this. And unfortunately, Lebanon can't even get rid of the Iranian ambassador they asked to leave 2 weeks ago. So how are they supposed to get rid of Hezbollah?
So actually, maybe they're negotiating with the wrong people. Maybe the Lebanese government just doesn't have the clout, as you're saying, Michael.
Well, they haven't, and they're connected to Iran. I think what we should do is send Starmer and Cooper out to negotiate with them, to take some photos, like they like doing with everybody else, and it would probably be quieter for them than going to Parliament next week.
I'd say it probably would, Michael. We'll see what happens there. Michael in Hertfordshire, thank you very much. Angie says, Keir needs to stop saying he didn't know. He's the Prime Minister. He should know. Joanna in Salisbury says, hi, Cardi P. Hi, Joanna. Good to see you back in full form. I'm not sure about that, Joanna, but I'm here in body, if not in spirit anyway. I think Starmer, if he has any conscience left, he should call an election. The whole lot of them are rotten to the core. I think they need to examine all the phones. All the phones. The answer is in McSweeney's phone and all the texts he sent, in Joanna's opinion. Leslie says, this news about Mandelson vetting was known on Monday, so why didn't Starmer come to Parliament to give an explanation? Well, we're told it was actually Tuesday rather than Monday. Bloomberg reporting that the online, well, not online, but the financial news service Bloomberg, who have a very good political team reporting that, Leslie. The question is, why didn't he tell Parliament in time? Was he waiting for after PMQs, for example, so he didn't feel the heat on all of this? Lots of questions remain. Whatever you think those questions are, however you think they should be dealt with, you let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We're going to talk in just a second about a story I'm really keen to talk about. This again was sent in by a viewer, so thank you very much to everybody who's sending all these things in and these different ideas. So just send me a direct message on Twitter, send them to me on tweets, or ring in and let me know. This is back to book. Sweden's schools cutting back on digital learning. Have screens actually got a role in schools, or should we be back to the old methods? We'll be talking to the director of the New Schools Network, Meg Powell-Chandler, in just a second, so stay with us here on Talk.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday. Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious, since the whole point of this part of the war, well, at least as I thought it, or saw it, was to reopen it. Can anybody explain that? You are not a worthy citizen. You couldn't even spot a murderer in your own house. Well, you could. You just didn't tell anyone about it. Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk. Only at the home of common sense.
He's just trying to take credit, Keir Starmer, isn't he?
This man is not a leader. He is not the statesman that our country needs. He is failing us at every single level.
Donald Trump understands that Keir Starmer is fundamentally not a patriot.
Yeah.
He's not on the side of the West. He's been appeasing the Iranians in order to shore up his vote in this country.
In front of me is Waitrose, and I'm about to head in there. I literally openly put the stuff in my bag.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Something a bit different now. This is an interesting one from Sweden. The government championing a renewed focus on physical books, paper and pens in classroom. They have been struggling, as we have in this country, with falling literacy levels. They want to double down on analogue tools, but quite a number of tech companies obviously not happy. They said it could have a bad impact on pupils' employment prospects and even damage Norway's economy. We're trying actually to get rid of screens as much as possible, says Joar Forsell, who's an education spokesman for the Liberal Party, whose leader is Sweden's education minister. With higher ages in school, you might use them a little bit more, but with lower ages or in school, I don't think we should use screens at all. Well, Meg Powell-Chandler is director of the New Schools Network, former teacher herself. Meg, you're very welcome to the programme. What do you make of this?
Thanks for having me, Peter. I think it is welcome because ultimately what it is doing is it is following the evidence. You're increasingly seeing a variety of research studies that are showing that when children learn to write with a pen or a pencil, it helps actually their brain develop and form more neurons. When they read on paper rather than on screens, it helps their comprehension and their retention. And so it is welcome to see the move away from compulsory screens in the classroom, which I think was part of what Sweden was doing. I think from 2019, the government there said that in preschool, iPads needed to be part of the curriculum. And I think moving away from that compulsory use of screens is really welcome.
Certainly. And what is the situation in this country? How compulsory is it to use screens? Because my father was a head teacher for many years, and he told me that he showed me the computers that were in his school a number of years ago. I said, oh, isn't it great you've got as many computers as you do? And he said, look, they can be a tool, they can be useful, but just because you can do something and just because you have technology doesn't necessarily mean you should absolutely use it, especially when you're teaching children.
I think that your father kind of hit the nail on the head there, right? So it is really tempting because tech is so powerful to think that just by adding it to education, you're going to improve schooling. But that is not the case. Just by throwing a device in doesn't mean that things are going to improve. I think across England schools, you're seeing actually quite a wide variety about how tech is used. But the best teachers and the best leaders, where they're using it, they are embedding it into the way they are thinking about how their children are learning, and they're embedding the tech to help that process. Any school that is just throwing tech in and thinking, oh, great, that's going to help us, they're not going to see the kind of additional educational benefits. But again, like all the best schools, whether they're using tech or not, are thinking, what do our children need to learn and how can we adequately teach them that?
What about AI in schools? How is it being used, and is it being used correctly in your opinion?
Well, there's again, it's really it's a new thing. So again, across schools, it's different. I'm speaking to teachers and leaders. Some of them are kind of slightly all for it. A lot of them are a little bit more skeptical, because there is definite evidence again that by using large language models and AI, actually that is cognitive offloading. So basically, you might get the information in your brain for a short period of time, but when it comes down to the exam, it's no longer there because you haven't actually learnt it by going out and doing that research yourself. So I think people are being very, very skeptical. And the great thing about education is recently we've seen a lot more research go into it. And it means that teachers and leaders and governments can look at the research and the evidence and see what that shows them. And they can make decisions based on what is best for their pupils from that.
On screens more generally, there seems to be this move that we need to get kids off screens. We need to not give them phones until they're able to cope with them. We need to limit screen time and so on. Are schools being blamed for that? Which is, you know, a lot of adults spend far too much time on screens too.
Yeah, they do. I think you're hearing from teachers and head teachers themselves, a lot of them, that they would like screens to get out of schools. Lots of them are doing it anyway. They have got the power to do it, but some teachers have said that they would like the government to back them up and ban them in schools. I think the key thing about all screens, all tech, phone, whatever in schools is schools are a place of learning, right? You should make sure that what is going on with those children is that they are able to learn. And the difficulty with screens, with technology, with devices, is that they've been proven to distract children from the process of learning. And if your kid is distracted, then they are not learning, and that is a massive problem.
But what about these people who are saying, for example, in the Swedish study, they're saying, well, actually, hold on a second, screens are a way of life in the workplace. Training children or having them interact with them is actually a very important thing at their early stage in life.
Yeah, well, I think that this is where we've got to delineate between skills and knowledge, right? So a kid has got to be able to read A kid has got to be able to write, and then once they've got those basic skills, that's how you then use them later on in life. I think the key thing about the article was it didn't just say like textbooks, it said pens and paper as well. And there was just so much evidence about actually if you write with a pen versus typing, you learn more. And people have got to have knowledge before they can go on and use skills. You're not going to be asking like a 4-year-old to go on and start computer programming. They need to actually understand, you know, what's the knowledge that might need to be on a page, or what does the program need to do before they're able to learn those skills first.
Meg, thank you. That's Meg Powell-Chandler, their director of the New Schools Network. Thank you to Elisa in Chelmsford, who says, my granddaughter is under 2. She has more books than I've had in my lifetime. She surrounds herself with superb books and we have great fun reading them together. It is wonderful. Bring back books for sure. Leslie says, surely the poor girl attacked in Epsom would know the ethnicities of her attackers and would have told the police. Why have riot squad if the perpetrators are white? Another person says, the horrendous rape allegation, just a thought, the perpetrators may have put a cover over the victim's head so she couldn't see them to provide a description. Police might want to keep that modus operandi to themselves. The riot gear appears over the top, but I wasn't privy to any intelligence. If only we'd seen that at the Al Quds protest. That's someone who sent that in anonymously, a former police officer. So lots to discuss in all of this. We're going to talk as well about the Green Party in just a moment, because the local elections are on at the moment. We're not going to mention names or constituencies, otherwise I'll have to read out every single person who's standing in that constituency. But there are some really real worries, including from the former deputy leader of the Green Party, that it is becoming an Islamist front and has been infiltrated. We'll talk about all of that and take your calls in just a moment. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Starmer under pressure, who to believe, what to believe. We'll talk about that in the next hour. We'll also talk about the ceasefire that's starting in 57 minutes time between Israel and Lebanon. Those leaders will be brought to the White House in the next few days. We're told by Donald Trump, for the first time in 44 years, the prime ministers of those countries will be speaking to one another. Very, very interesting development there. We'll also speak about the problems at home, including in the Green Party, because Shahrar Ali, who's the former deputy leader of the party, is very concerned, as as am I, that the party is becoming a danger to society. That's what he says, following a surge in membership has leapt from 68,000 to 215,000 under Zach Polanski's leadership. But who are those members? What are they saying? We'll go through some of the anti-Semitic things that some of the candidates have said. We'll get your views on all of this too. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring. All opinions welcome, and we will make sure that you get your voice in the air in whatever form between now and 10 o'clock. That number again, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk. So if you are lifting the phone, if you are texting in, if you are sending me a WhatsApp voice note, and please do send those in, you might want to be reminded of what the Prime Minister, our main story tonight, of course, about Peter Mandelson, who knew what when. Prime Minister insists that even though Peter Mandelson failed the vetting, all the tests the security services put him through, even then, the Foreign Office apparently said that he had passed and didn't tell the Prime Minister that Mandelson had failed in the first place. Let's just remind ourselves what the Prime Minister told Parliament on the 10th of September last year.
As she and the House would expect, full due process was followed during this appointment, as it is with all ambassadors. The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret. He is right to do so. He is now playing an important part in the US-UK relationship. Mr. Speaker, as I say, full due process was gone through in relation to this appointment, as would be expected. As for the publication of documents, as she well knows, that's subject to a procedure which includes an independent element. Be subject to the usual procedure.
That was Keir Starmer in September saying there was a full due process followed. Kemi Badenoch reacting today to this major statement. She says he misled Parliament.
Three serious concerns here. The first one is that on the 10th of September, the Prime Minister misled Parliament by saying the full due process was followed. If Mandelson failed the security vetting, full due process was not followed. Misleading Parliament is a resigning offence. On the 5th of February, at a press conference in Hastings, the Prime Minister said that Peter Mandelson cleared the vetting process. This is not true. That means he broke the ministerial code by saying something deliberately untrue. He misled the country. And the third thing is that it looks like there's been a cover-up, because we had a humble address in Parliament where we asked for all of the documents. This did not come out then. It's gone to the press. That means that something was being covered up.
Kemi Badenoch on that. Well, what do you think is afoot here? What has happened? And will the Prime Minister have to go to Parliament very, very soon, I would imagine, to apologise that he misled them? What do you think he should say? And who should take responsibility for this? The Prime Minister or the Foreign Office? Whatever you think. 0344 499 1000. Peter sent me a WhatsApp on that message. It says the buck stops with Starmer, regardless of what the PM was or was not told. He always said, I stand by my staff. Well, he's got rid of quite a few of them recently. I want to talk about another political party. The elections are on, the local elections obviously at the moment in many parts of England. In Scotland there are elections to the Parliament. In Wales there are elections to the Assembly. I'm not going to mention the names of the people who have made these remarks, specifically because if I do that, I'm going to have to read out a big long list of almost 20 people in each constituency, and that's going to bore us all to tears. But what I'm going to tell you is three things that Green Party candidates have said. We've seen a huge jump in the membership of the Green Party from 68,000 to 215,000 under Zach Polanski's leadership. We'll talk to the former deputy leader of that party in just a second. One candidate said that he believed that social media, he certainly shared social media posts claiming that the recent Golders Green attacks, we remember those horrendous, dreadful, unspeakable attacks on those ambulances, this person shared posts alleging they were a false flag. In another post in 2021, this candidate described Sir Keir Starmer as an Israeli puppet. He shared a post which urged Muslims not to smoke because it helped, as he put it, funding the Jews to kill our brothers. Another candidate said, in reference to the Golders Green attacks, he wrote a post on a now private X account which stated, I can say with almost absolute certainty that the men arrested are white, probably even Jewish, because we all know for a fact that if they weren't, their names and pictures would be everywhere. I mean, that factually was wrong, as well as being dreadfully anti-Semitic. Another candidate, in a video entitled True Cause of the Anti-Semitic Ambulance Attack, attributed responsibility for last month's attack on Hatzalah ambulances in North London to the Israeli Prime Minister. To what extent has Benjamin Netanyahu made the lives of Jewish people all over the world more dangerous by committing a genocide? Asked the candidate. And just finally, another candidate, as I say, I'm not reading out their names because I've got to read out their names, got to read out the list of every single person they're against in their constituency. If I even mentioned the constituency, I would have to do that, and we'll be here all night. So I'm not covering anything up, and if you want to look these things up, you can find them, I'm sure, very quickly online. This candidate argued that the 7th of October attacks on Israel, which saw at least they vary certainly in terms of the number of people who were killed, but certainly somewhere in the region of 1,200. Days after that attack, this person posted on Instagram, "In the face of the biased mainstream media, it is apparent that the Palestinians' legal right to resist is being portrayed as barbarism and unwarranted." Those were attacks where people were burned, taken as hostages, raped, and were murdered. Absolutely horrendous. Those are 4 candidates for the Green Party who are asking, one of them's withdrawn, but 3 of them are asking for your vote at this election. Sharar Ali is a former deputy leader of the Green Party. Sharar, thank you for joining me in the studio again. What do you make of this?
Well, it's sobering, isn't it? It makes me deeply ashamed, not just as a human being, but as a doubly ashamed as a former deputy leader of the Green Party, what we're descending into. It betrays not just a complete lack of vetting and quality control of our candidates. And we're not just talking about local election candidates here, actually. There is a history of things being found for other types of candidate and other types of elections as well. But it also reveals that our apparent indifference to quality control. So I would regard that as intentional. Quality control, vetting of candidates, is not an optional extra. It is a necessity, without which we will be facing these types of allegation, particularly around anti-Semitism at this time. And what it reveals is that we have essentially put electoralism, naked electoralism, and particularly on the Gaza-Palestine issue, ahead of justice. In this case, justice and anti-discrimination for everybody in society. The Jewish community in particular, I would say the majority of them, but one is too many, are feeling particularly besieged. We have had not just foiled Islamist terror plots, but actual Islamist terrorism. I think it's shameful, actually, that the attack, the arson attack on Jewish ambulances, because they were Jewish, was not described as a terrorist incident. It was. And it's shameful also that the Green Party was not vocal around those attacks, and they haven't taken action and steps to combat the rise in anti-Semitic Jewish hatred. We've actually been a cause of that in the way that we've been campaigning in elections.
What would you say to, no doubt Zach Polanski would say, hold on a second, I'm Jewish. He has said previously, actually, when he was running for the Liberal Democrats, I understand, although he's been in a number of different political parties, that he said a vote for me is a vote for Israel. His view seems to have changed rather dramatically.
Well, he's a hypocrite, and frankly, it's as irrelevant to him being Jewish as it is to me being a Muslim, that I will, as a human being, call it as I see it. Muslims at the moment are being attracted to the party for the wrong reasons, and the Green Party is providing them with a platform, including Motin Ali, who will not be subjected to scrutiny. He does not take interviews, as far as I can tell. He's being insulated from the media.
I have asked him on a number of times to come on this programme. I am fascinated as to why he was at the Al-Quds protest, for example. I'm fascinated as to why he was at a pro-Iranian protest.
His political statements and actions and inactions will be interpreted from a reasonable standpoint. And that is to say that he has never criticised Islam, as far as I can tell. So it raises the question, is the Green Party, under his deputy leadership, and the Muslims within the party, are they prioritising all things Muslim ahead of Green Party policies and priorities? And I think that's what's happening. It's being subverted.
I've heard some crazy stuff coming out of Zach Polanski's mouth about legalising drugs. We've seen him dancing with someone in bondage gear. I wonder what Motin Ali would think about that. I'd love to ask him. We've seen all sorts of policies from the Green Party that it seemed to have nothing to do with ecological issues, which I know is not the only thing the Green Party look to, but it used to be anyway a pretty major part of what they did.
Yeah, it is absolutely preposterous, frankly, ahead of the local elections, for our major policy plank in our literature and on the doorstep to be around Gaza. And there is a definition of anti-Semitism, which I actually chose to resist around about 2018, and how the party has changed, because at the time Zach Polanski was arguing against me on the conference floor for why the IHRA definition should be adopted. And I would say now, because context is everything, some of the very things in that definition have come true. For example, it was regarded as anti-Semitic, according to that definition, to prioritise campaigning against Israel over anything else. And that's exactly what's happened now. We have campaigned on it obsessively to the exclusion of all other human rights violations across the world, which are visible to all, including in Iran. So why are we doing that? With that degree of so-called pro-Palestinian campaigning, including chants of "from the river to the sea," which is a anti-Semitic slogan, if ever there was one, at which the leaders have been, allied with and associated with. If we are to do that in the climate of hostility, then Jews in this country, and they've told us this, are feeling besieged. Even I'm feeling besieged on their behalf. This is abhorrent, and we need to do something about it. Zach Polanski, unfortunately, is a hypocrite. Because Jewish or not Jewish, what he's been doing is arguing that let's not conflate criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism, but you have to call it as you find it. The way in which we're currently campaigning, with great insensitivity after grotesque anti-Jewish attacks on the mainland, the way in which we're campaigning, allying ourselves or even chanting "from the river to the sea," and there's only one interpretation of that.
Yes.
The way we have been pushing for deeply anti-Semitic motions at conference, recently at Spring Conference, Zionism is racism.
Yeah.
There's only one interpretation of that.
No, that didn't go through.
It didn't. It will probably live to fight another day and probably go through in autumn. But what I would say that reveals is, whilst the governing clique within the Green Party, probably Zach Polanski included, saw that it was potentially political suicide for them to pass that motion at conference, they're hypocrites. Because internally and even outwardly, they're pretending that they are in favour of that motion. But when it suits them politically, they're saying, actually, it's one step too far. There are some in the party who oppose that for the right reasons, and there are good reasons to oppose it.
What would you say to Zach Polanski? He hasn't responded to this article, but from what you've said previously. But factually, the Greens membership has gone up from 68,000 members to 215,000 members. You've got a Green Party which in a number of polls is the second largest party in the country. We've got local elections coming up where the Green Party may do very, very well. He would probably argue, I can't put words in his mouth, but he would probably say, hold on a second, my leadership is working. When you were deputy leader, none of this happened.
Zach is a very effective communicator, and he struck a chord. And no doubt there is a whole confluence of political reasons why he's doing particularly well, particularly like your party and the Corbyn party not doing particularly well, and obviously
0% in a recent poll.
Sakir, is looking bad at every turn. So yes, he's exploited and taken advantage of that. But what he's done, he's effectively rebranded the Green Party, which now has a hard left problem. And we are attracting and embracing with open arms all those characters who were rightly expelled from the Labour Party on anti-Semitism allegations. And one has to distinguish. There may be some allegations which are untrue and confected, but there are plenty which aren't. And some of those that you read from unnamed Green Party candidates are some of those which aren't. And we should be energetically rooting out those candidates and ensuring that no candidate stands for this party until they have passed all the relevant quality control and due diligence.
Shara just talked about the fact, and I'm just reminding you that the fact I'm not reading out those people's names is not because I don't want to tell you who they are, but because if I read them out under electoral law, because we're in the election period, I would have to read out the names of every single person who's standing in that ward or constituency. We also, for electoral reasons, and shouldn't anyway, no presenter or journalist should do this anyway, can't tell you who to vote for. And I want to be really, really clear about that. But I'm going to ask a very specific question to Shara. Are you voting Green in this local election?
Well, I mean, I was asked this question just yesterday at a reception, actually, and the way I put it is I will scrutinise the candidates doubly so. Even if they've got Green against their name, I won't take that as any kind of assurance that I would vote for them. In fact, I might regard it as an extra reason to check before voting for them, unfortunately.
OK. Shara, thank you very much indeed, Shara Ali, their former deputy leader of the Green Party. What do you think about this? What do you think about the Green Party candidates and other candidates standing in your part of the country? Now, there may not be local elections where you are, but there are certainly many, many thousands of candidates and many thousands of seats up for grabs. And we know that in Scotland, for the Parliament, and Wales for the Assembly, there are seats up for grabs there as well. Leslie says Starmer should address Parliament on Monday to resign. He once told Boris, the buck stops with you. Sarah says, I always pick my daughter up when she goes to a club, but she doesn't like that. She thinks I'm invading her privacy. I wouldn't have liked it when I was her age, but what else can we do to keep them safe? And regarding digital learning, this person says children need to develop social skills, motor and fine motor skills. Constant use of a mouse and screen does not facilitate such learning skills. Responding to our question and our piece a little bit earlier on all of that. Lots more to discuss. We're going to talk about Epsom, the riots there. Kevin Hurley, former Metropolitan Police Superintendent, will give us his view on all of that. I want yours too. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Nervously walked to the... This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, you know, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who's been in touch, including Big Tosh 10 on Twitter. Says if he didn't know, then Starmer is admitting he hasn't got a handle on the big decisions. If he didn't know, which is extremely doubtful, then Yvette Cooper and all involved need to be sacked in disgrace. Yvette Cooper was the Home Secretary at the time. David Lammy was the Foreign Secretary, and his officials apparently overruled the people who would have told Number 10 that Mandelson failed the vetting the first time round. Les says, "You've got to fall on your sword. This grave situation for democracy in our Parliament is unconscionable. Thank you, Starmer, and good luck." Nat says, she's in Israel, and she says, having been following UK politics these last few years, Peter, I've come to the conclusion that the only political party with some interesting ideas is the monster raving loony party. What have you got to lose? Well, it was co-led, I think, until the early 2000s by a cat called Mandu. I don't think Mandu is any longer with us. I'm not saying necessarily vote for any political party. I don't want to breach Ofcom or breach electoral law by saying that, but let's just say I saw Larry the cat earlier this week. I was in Number 10 for a meeting with some of the people talking about bringing people on this station and on this show, and I saw Larry and he was in good form. Steve says, even if someone worse took over from two-tier Keir, I don't care anymore. They're from the same cloth. I want to see him suffer. That man has brought out a sense of hatred on the side of me I never thought I had in me, and I don't think I'm alone. This feels personal to me, says Steve. And Joanna sent a lovely message. She says, Peter, just want to wish you good luck in your job at City University next week. I'm confident you'll do a good job. You'll definitely be missed next week. Well, Joanna, thank you. That's a really kind thing to text in. Please do keep watching and give Alex Phillips your support next week. She's filling in for me all week, Monday to Friday next week, but I am here tomorrow and then I'm back the following Monday. I'm heading off to teach some students at City University. They're learning political journalism and I am their teacher, their tutor, so looking forward to that next week, but I will be back on the 27th. Right then, let's speak to Kevin Hurley. He's a former Metropolitan Police Superintendent, about what's going on in Epsom and the demonstrations there. Protesters demanding CCTV of gang rape suspects. Kevin, what do you make of this? Why 6 days on do you think we haven't got even a description of the suspect?
Well, the most likely reason to me would be that Surrey Police have made a decision not to give away that information. One would have hoped they would have learnt from the Merseyside debacle, where not filling the information gap caused a lot of public anxiety. We ended up with trouble all over the country. But of course, I can't be sure. It might be that the woman who survived this ordeal can't remember anything about them and there might not be any CCTV. But investigative things you would be looking to do would be put out some kinds of descriptions of people who say, did anyone see these people nearby? Do you know anyone like that? Where were you at the time? So you would be looking for witness leads. But the other thing that concerns me, and I look at what I can see here on the street, you know, even this video, some little kid in a red top, and you've got rows and rows of riot police there, thinking this is Epsom High Street, for goodness sake, one of the wealthiest places in the United Kingdom. What have we come to when the way that local police commanders decide to manage this is by putting people out in riot kit and borrowing some from, it looks like Sussex, by the look of the markings on the helmets. I mean, it's unbelievable. What is going on here? Why isn't a chief inspector there, or at least an inspector, making a decision, get back in the trucks, in your vans, go and park round the corner, let's see if this really needs all this, and let's just tone it down. You know, I can't believe they've actually got people deployed in full riot gear like this, stood there facing them, and there's nothing going on.
A former copper got in touch with the programme who's a listener and said that her view was that perhaps they actually know who these people are and they're waiting for lab tests, perhaps of samples of DNA, shall we say, without going into any greater depth. Could that be part of this? I mean, someone somewhere has made a decision to not put information in the public domain. They must know something.
I find it difficult to see why they wouldn't want to do that, other than they think that they are from an ethnic minority group that's linked up with a great deal of involvement in rapes and so on, and they think that if they give those names out, it will start to cause problems in the local area.
Although they've got problems, Kevin, already. I mean, those people, as far as I can see, I don't know if any arrests have been made, but those protests seem to be, they seem to be entirely peaceful. I haven't heard of any arrests happening, and a huge police presence.
I agree. I look at it and I think, for goodness sake, when we will start to use social media better, when we will start to engage with the media quicker, and when we will start to put out a narrative that the public will believe. If you leave an information gap, they get filled by all kinds of situations So it would be if you don't know what they look like, you haven't got a description, say it.
Yeah, yeah.
Otherwise, people are going to fill this gap like they did up in Southport. And since then, there's been new police guidance come out from the College of Policing,
which they don't seem to be following. Which they don't seem to be following, Kevin. And if you don't know something, just put a senior officer up, get them even to do a post on social media, and a video on social media. Just say, look, we know there is a huge level of concern. This is a dreadful incident. We're supporting the victim of this. We will tell you everything. We will tell you as much as we can tell you when we know it. We're keeping nothing back from you. But we haven't heard that.
And going back to that point about they might be waiting for DNA tests to come back, which if they fast track them would come back within 48 hours anyway. So they should have had that if these people were known. There's always a possibility. But you're still going to want other eyewitnesses if they're available. So You're still going to ask. You're still going to do a witness appeal. And, if this is what we believe, which is an unknown offender, gang rape, it's a pretty serious crime, not far off a murder in terms of the resources you'd expect to put into it. So you'd be looking at witness appeals and saying, did you see anything, and so on. If you were going to really push this out and investigate it, you're taking every investigative lead forward. But the other thing that concerns me is, what on earth are they doing with all those people lined up in riot kit when there's actually not anything happening apart from one little kid there, about 12, Loic, who we can see is throwing something.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And I mean, just to give Surrey Police their due, Chief Superintendent Mark Chapman said, I understand the distress and concern that this incident has caused, both for the victim herself and amongst our local communities, and I want to reassure you we're working hard to progress this investigation. While we have already carried out extensive inquiries, we do not have sufficient information at this time to update you with the descriptions of the suspects. Is that credible, Kevin?
Well, unless the woman has been unconscious throughout it, I would say not. Because one of the things they will do after they've carried out a forensic medical exam is they will get her witness testimony as soon as they can, ideally video her, because that's the quickest way and the best way to do it. And then straight away you've got something to work off. So it's not credible in my view, or perhaps, yes, there are elements of it are true, but that it still doesn't cover the issue of why haven't Surrey Police given out information to allay public fears that this is not Afghans, for example, who of course are the most overrepresented group in the country in terms of participation in rapes. They could say it.
Yeah. Well, they could rule people out. Kevin, thank you. That's Kevin Hurley there, former Metropolitan Police Superintendent, joining us on the Evening Exchange. Appreciate your contribution there. We're going to talk a bit more about what's happening in America next with Rear Admiral Mike Hewitt. He's a former Pentagon official, an ex-US Navy officer. Lots of time for calls as well between now and 10 o'clock before Andre and Ash take over between 10 and 1. So much to discuss, and please do get your call in. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me as well, 87222 with the word talk in your text, or send me a voice note on the main number too, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Ernie. He says, Peter, I hope this poor girl isn't being thrown under a bus just to appease social cohesion. That would be deplorable. It would indeed be deplorable, Ernie. We'll see what happens with this and what information they can give us. Give me your view on this or any story, including the one we're going to talk about now about the ceasefire agreed between Israel and Lebanon. 0344 499 1000. Rear Admiral Mike Hewitt joins me now. He's a former Pentagon official, former US Navy officer. Mike, great to have you back on the programme. How are you doing?
Peter, well, great to be with you again.
Tell me about your thoughts about a ceasefire agreed with Israel and Lebanon. What about Hezbollah? What do they do?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, because Hezbollah is really the proxy network that's causing all the havoc between Lebanon and Israel. It's a very fragile situation, but the conditions for a ceasefire, which could lead to the conditions for a peace deal, would not happen had we not taken out the Iranian military and set the conditions for these conversations. And the last thing I'll say on this, it's a risky gamut for Netanyahu. His own people won't be too pleased with this, but he understands the bigger picture, and he's working alongside the U.S., Saudi Arabia, and others to try to get to something that looks like a stable peace for the region.
Yes, and I wonder how you think this militarily and politically really segues with Iran, because of course, as you correctly point out, Hezbollah are their proxy, and this is a separate conflict, but nonetheless one that's intrinsically related to what's going on with the Straits of Hormuz, with the Iranian attack, that ceasefire that continues as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the phase of the war now, and you've heard it called economic fury from epic fury, where we're now doing secondary sanctions on financial institutions that are supporting Iran, and of course the naval blockade, which has been quite successful over the first 3 days. And I think it's important to understand this blockade has 3 phases to it. The first phase is obviously to stop any Iranian commerce from coming in or leaving the Gulf. So ships are turning around in the Gulf of Oman, or if they're leaving Iran, they're turned around and sent back to the Iranian port. The second phase will be to open the straits itself for the safe passage of non-Iranian vessels, and we're very close to that. And with that, we will escort those vessels, if need be, through the straits. And I think the blockade is also a global blockade. We will take out Iranian ships in the Pacific that are carrying Iranian oil. So what's happening geopolitically is there are costs being imposed on China and Russia and others, and these costs are now causing a little bit of concern by the Chinese, and I think the Chinese are weighing in heavily with the Iranians to say, you need to get to a peace deal. This is not sustainable.
Speaking of the sustainability of this economically, there are so many people who are hurting economically right across the world as a result of what is happening. I was sent some pictures, some photographs by Nigel Howard, who's a photographer in the UK, of very, very expensive petrol and diesel that are being sold in admittedly quite an expensive part of London, but we're seeing those prices go up. How much appetite is there really for how long this can go on? President Trump keeps saying another 2 or 3 weeks, or that it's coming to an end, for example. How much appetite is there in the US? Certainly in the UK, it's affecting us, even though, as Keir Starmer continually says, it's not our war. I just wonder with the American public how interested they are, and indeed how much patience they have.
Well, the United States isn't really dependent upon Middle East oil. So that's one aspect of it. But the global price is obviously impacting everybody, including the United States. So this is really creating a challenge politically for President Trump. But at the same time, I know that the Interior Secretary and the Secretary of Energy met with the CEOs of the major oil industries in America just today and challenged them to increase production to help offset the challenges from the Middle East. So I think there's a solution at hand. I applaud President Trump for understanding this may not be the most politically advantageous thing to do, but geopolitically, he has eliminated Iran's nuclear program, and I think that far outweighs the spike in oil prices.
Does he care about regime change, do you think, Mike?
I don't. I think he cares about an Iran that wants to be part of the global community, an Iran that stops slaughtering its people, and Iran that stops funding terrorism and the proxy networks. He doesn't really care who's leading that country, but unfortunately, we don't know who is leading it right now. And the current regime, for the last 47 years, really has no intention of peace because that would be their failure. So we have to get to the more pragmatic leaders in Iran, and there are plenty of them that want peace and stability. And the last thing I'll say on this is the two allies that are encouraging the United States to continue this campaign against Iran are Saudi Arabia and Israel. And for those two to come alongside the America in this tells you quite a bit about the conditions that President Trump has set for peace in the region.
And perhaps how they've moved on post-Gaza as well. Very interesting to hear from you, Mike. Thank you, Rear Admiral Mike Hewitt, former Pentagon official and ex-US Navy officer. Thank you for that. I want to go to Greg in Edinburgh now, who's on the phones. He's giving me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Greg, you have some views on Mandelson. What do you make of this affair, and what should the Prime Minister do now?
Well, first of all, can I just say that when I'm almost terminally cynical about our political class, but how refreshing it was to have Mr. Ali on there earlier on.
Yeah, agreed.
I totally probably disagree with him about everything.
Yes.
But to actually hear someone of obvious integrity in politics is quite refreshing.
Greg, I feel exactly the same way. I don't disagree with a single word you've said.
But to get from the sublime to the ridiculous, to go to the other extreme, when you're talking about the Prime Minister, and we all know what a great lawyer he is, heaven forfend that I should accuse him of anything criminal. So we'll stick to the civil and the civil level of proof, and that's what's most likely. The
balance of probabilities. Yeah.
You've worked in the government, in the civil service, and in Parliament. Now, what are the chances that information that is known in the Foreign Office, that the security services have carried out this vetting of Mr. Mandelson, and he's failed, that information should in no way leak across into Downing Street?
Can I tell you what I think has happened, Greg? I think they were told Mandelson's going to be the ambassador, make this happen. Then they did the vetting as they had to, so the Prime Minister could say the full process was gone through. They thought, oh dear, he's failed the vetting, as he was probably always going to do anyway. He's failed the vetting, and you can feel it for all sorts of reasons. Maybe he wasn't telling them the full truth, maybe they knew things he wasn't being open and honest about, and we know that Mandelson is a proven liar. They then probably thought, the vetters thought, right, we have to say he's failed it. The Foreign Office then thought, okay, we've two options here. One, we can go to the Prime Minister and say he's failed the vetting, or we can hush this up. We can say, despite the fact that he has failed the vetting, we're going to pass him and say it's all fine. And that would have been a decision taken at the very highest level of the Foreign Office, and I would be absolutely fascinated to hear what the Permanent Secretary, Ollie Robbins, says about that. And I think that Number 10 in their statement have thrown him under a bus this evening. Maybe he should be thrown under a bus, metaphorically, of course, for this. But someone somewhere has said, he's failed the vetting, we've been given our instructions by Number 10, and no matter what happens, he could have exposed himself and run down the street of Whitehall. He's still going to be the ambassador to America. Therefore, we've got to make this work. That's what I think happened.
I'm afraid to say I disagree with you. I just think that it's almost beyond credibility that the information known in the Foreign Office that he'd failed the vetting did not reach the ears of the Prime Minister, and that people in the Foreign Office and in Downing Street were working in such completely different silos. Whitehall leaks like a sieve.
Yeah, yes, it does, and I have sympathy for your view. I'm not saying I'm necessarily right. I'm saying this is what I think could happen, but I have absolute sympathy for your view, Greg. I also know there are a lot of people in politics, including at a very high level, who insulate themselves and say, don't tell me what I don't need to know so I can deny knowing it later.
Well, that's even more cynical and insulting to the electorate.
Of course it is, and it happens all the time.
It's appalling. And you know what it reminded me? I said to your researcher that when you're getting to the realms of possibility and credibility,
yes.
When our late lamented First Minister, Miss Sturgeon, said that she had forgotten when told that her her best friend, her mentor, her second father had been accused of sexual assault. And she wanted us to believe that she'd forgotten being told about that. This is the level of these people, and that's the contrast with Mr. Ali. The level of the likes of the Prime Minister, the likes of the former First Minister, they just insult our intelligence, and that's what grates most.
Greg, thank you for your thoughts this evening. I think you speak for a lot of people, and you speak for how disillusioned so many people feel about politics and the realities of politics, especially when these claims that you've indicated a few of them there, stretch the bounds of credibility in many people's minds. I'm sure Nicola Sturgeon would deny that she did anything wrong there. I'm sure she would deny and say that she did genuinely forget about that. Alex Salmond is dead, of course, and we don't know his view on it, and we'll never know his view on it right now, especially as there are obviously ongoing criminal proceedings in Scotland on other matters, which Greg hasn't mentioned very wisely. Paul is in Kent. We're going to speak to him in just a second. We're going to take more calls right up until 10 o'clock. We're going to have a quick word with Ash as well about what's on his show with Andre. If you want to get your call in between now and 10 o'clock, give me a shout. 0344 499 1000. I'll take as many calls as I can between now and 10. Stay with us.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday. Donald Trump has closed the Strait of Hormuz. This is curious, since the whole point of this part of the war, well, at least as I thought it, or saw it, was to reopen it. Can anybody explain that? You are not a worthy citizen. You couldn't even spot a murderer in your own house. Well, you could. You just didn't tell anyone about it.
The world is on fire. Russia, Iran, China.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, it was in September last year that Keir Starmer said this to Parliament.
As she and the House would expect, full due process was followed during this appointment, as it is with all ambassadors, the ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret. He is right to do so. He's now playing an important part in the US-UK relationship. Mr. Speaker, as I say, full due process was gone through in relation to this appointment, as would be expected. As for the publication of documents, as she well knows, that's subject to a procedure which includes an independent element. Be subject to the usual procedure.
Full due process subject to the usual procedure. Well, what is not usual is that someone fails the vetting and then they're made ambassador to America. Starmer was asked about this again in February. This is what he said at a press conference.
The original, there was a due diligence exercise that culminated in questions being asked. Because I wanted to know the answer to certain issues, that's why those questions were asked. The answers to those questions were not truthful. There was then, I should add, security vetting carried out independently by the security services, which is an intensive exercise that gave him clearance for the role, and you have to go through that before you take up the post. Clearly, both the due diligence and the security vetting need to be looked at again.
The security vetting which gave him clearance for the role, that is not true. That is not what happened. So what did Keir Starmer know and when? Now, we have a statement from Downing Street this evening saying that Prime Minister wasn't told, no one in Number 10 was told, Foreign Office made the decision without telling them. Kemi Badenoch, Leader of the Opposition, not happy. This is what she said this evening.
There are three serious concerns here. The first one is that on the 10th of September, the Prime Minister misled Parliament by saying the full due process was followed. If Mandelson failed the security vetting, full due process was not followed. Misleading Parliament is a resigning offence. On the 5th of February, at a press conference in Hastings, the Prime Minister said that Peter Mandelson cleared the vetting process. This is not true. That means he broke the ministerial code by saying something deliberately untrue. He misled the country. And the third thing is that it looks like there's been a cover-up, because we had a humble address in Parliament where we asked for all of the documents. This did not come out then. It's gone to the press. That means that something was being covered up.
Kemi Badenoch speaking this evening. Jason in the Lake District's been in touch and says, Peter, do you think the Mandelson story will have any impact on Starmer this time? It certainly doesn't pass the sniff test for the majority once again. I think it will have an impact. I think 3 weeks today, there are local elections in many parts of England. There's an election to the Scottish Parliament and to the Welsh Assembly. I think it will have an impact on that to some degree, but I don't think Labour are going to dump their leader 3 weeks before an election. Are they going to dump their leader after the election? Well, we will see. We know that Labour are in 4th place in some polls after the Green Party, after Reform UK, and after even the Conservatives in some of those polls. They vary from poll to poll, but there are a lot of polls coming out at the moment. Let's get your view on all of this. Peter has been in Paul in Kent is our first caller, 0344 499 1000. Paul, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good evening, Pete. It's Peter, sorry.
Oh, it is Peter. I have Paul. Apologies for that.
We got our names confused.
Well, fly away, Peter. Fly away, Paul. We'll get you down in the system in the right one. So the next time you ring up, we'll get it right. Go ahead.
But what I was going to say is, with this Keir Starmer thing this afternoon, he says that all due process has been followed correctly. So if he had been left out in the dark and he's been given, he thinks he's 95% sure, he's still lying, because when you tell saying that's 95% sure, it's a lie, isn't it? Because
he said the clearance had been given. So if he didn't know that, and if he was acting on information that was not entirely correct, well, he should have known. He should have asked the question, shouldn't he, Peter? He should have said. He should have said, "Hold on a second. Tell me everything. What are you not telling me? Tell me everything."
Yes, exactly, because that's what a leader does. A leader goes, look, why am I not being told something? I want to know. I want to lead what I want to get. I want to get where I want to get. I want to put society where I think it's correct, where I want it to be, and where I've been mandated by vote by the democratic decision of the public.
And also, if you're absolutely,
man is a liar.
He
needs to resign, or the king needs to stand up and disavow, not disavow, sorry, that's the incorrect word.
We don't want that, but certainly tackle him politically anyway. Peter, listen, thank you for that. There's Peter in Kent there. And there are far more questions than answers. Let's go to Justin in Sheffield, who wants to talk about the Iranians. Justin, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yes, right there, Peter. I'm getting increasingly concerned about the Strait of Hormuz, the effect it will have on the economy, the effect it's having on fuel prices, the effect it's having on flying. We've got a trip booked, etc., etc. And what I don't understand is this: there is no question that the Iranians have no legal right in international law to shut the Strait of Hormuz, right? So why are we just letting them do that? Why have we got a Royal Navy if it's not to ensure freedom of legal navigation?
Because the Royal Navy isn't up to it, are they? And they don't want to get involved with this war. And even if it is a breach of international laws, I don't disagree with a single word you've said there, Justin, but the fact is our leaders do not want us to be involved in this war. So even if it is a breach of international law, they're not going to do anything about it.
Well, in that case, Starmer and the rest of them are just guilty of gross hypocrisy, because they're standing there wringing their hands. Oh, isn't this terrible? We have to do something, but they could do something, and they're not doing it.
But that's the point as well with international law. It only really exists if there are sanctions for it, and if you recognise those courts, and if you do what those courts tell you to do, whether it's an international court, a European court, or whatever. And there have been numerous times when they've been ignored in lots of different ways. Really interesting point there, Justin, and thank you for ringing me from Sheffield. Ruby is in Salford and has some thoughts on another story we're talking about this evening. I think it's Epsom that's on your mind, Ruby. What would you like to say?
Hi. First, I'd like to say hello, Peter, and I absolutely love you.
Thank you, Ruby. Very kind.
You're welcome. I just think, I've been at the sharp end of the stick of something like this, so without going into too much detail. So my absolute empathy is with the lady.
Okay. Whatever happened, Ruby, and you don't need to tell us any more detail whatsoever. All I want to say is I'm sorry that happened to you.
That's okay, thank you. It's not your fault. Anyway, so but I do think that the police, the government, and other, I believe that by not releasing information, that's just going to cause another load of aggro.
Yeah.
Everybody getting on the high horse about everything without knowing the ins and outs, obviously.
It's this vacuum, Ruby, isn't it? It's the vacuum that's there. And if you give people, you don't need to give people the whole information if you can't do that. The last thing we would want to do is to have anybody prejudicing a trial or doing anything that would make sure that these scumbags don't face justice. But they can tell us something.
Yes, they can. And, I may be speaking out of turn now, but I think that it's very rare for... No, you see, I'm going to sound awful now. Gang rapes generally, I don't know the last... sorry, anyway.
I think a lot of people will perhaps guess what's on your mind, Ruby. It's up to you whether you say it or not, but certainly there are major problems.
Because I don't like prison food.
Neither do I, Ruby. Listen, thank you for your call. I really appreciate it. And thanks for the kind words as well. That's Ruby in Salford there. Noel's in Nottingham and has some thoughts on the ceasefire before we talk to Ash. Noel, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hello again, Peter. Yeah, I was speaking to you before.
Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, and good to talk to you, brother. God bless. Peter, this ceasefire won't hold. For the simple reason is that Hezbollah, which means the Army of God.
The Army of God, yeah.
Yeah, in Lebanon, yeah. I'm very familiar with the Quran, and when you read the likes of Surah An-Nisa, chapter ayat 4, ayat 3, ayat 24, ayat 25, where Muhammad tells his men that they can take slaves, anything the right hand possesses. and situations like that. The Shia Muslims, they want, and they haven't changed in Iran. You know, now that the Ayatollah is dead, there's going to be someone else that's going to come along.
Yeah, well, we're told his son is now in control. I mean, he'll be as bad, if not worse.
I think he's dead, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I believe he's dead. They're not talking about him, and
yeah, we haven't seen a picture of him either. Have you just before? No, I've got to go to another caller just in a second. But do you have hopes for this ceasefire? Do you think it can hold?
No, Peter. I think Trump has let the 64% of the people of Iran down. He let them down by leaving the people that he bombed in power. And they will now take it out on the people. Yeah. There's 75,000 mosques in Iran. Only 20,000 have people going to them. Nobody goes anymore. Yeah. You know, only the real people who are really...
Very, very, very interesting points there, Noel. Let's talk again on another occasion. I just want to squeeze in Mark in Lincolnshire just in the last couple of minutes. Mark, you're very welcome to the programme, but please do make your point briefly. Go ahead.
If it's going to be brief, then all I really want, well, really quickly, restore Britain, 9% in the polls. Suck on that, Nigel. There you go. So, yeah... This will progress. This will only get bigger and more, you know, larger and larger. Nigel will quit when they go down to about 17%. That's my theory. Because he doesn't like to lose, Nigel.
Well, we'll certainly see what happens, Mark, and we'll have a longer conversation on another occasion. Let me play a couple of voice notes. Firstly, Peter on Starmer.
The man doesn't really know when he lies now, does he? He believes his lies all the time. He lies constantly. Everything is a lie. I don't think he can help himself. I think he needs some sort of treatment for this because he is just a kleptomaniac, can't help himself stealing, just as a liar cannot help himself lying. The man lies. Kianocchio, that should be his new name. But then again, I should think the amount of time he's lied now, his nose would be about 10 foot long, wouldn't it?